Hey, how you doing? It's Clayton here from howtodrawcomics.net, and welcome to this year's Sequential SummerSlam review. Ed, this is your baby. You came up with the Sequential SummerSlam, so why don't you tell everybody about it?
Okay. Well, this is our maybe seventh or eighth installment of our sequential challenge. So each time, what we do is we put forth whether it's a script or some twist on a challenge and let our students and artists submit some amazing sequential work. This particular challenge was to take a published comic book page from any era or anything and redraw it in your style. So, what we're hoping for here is that you didn't just copy it. That was part of it. We don't want just a copy. We want it redrawn. So you can, push and pull on the panels a little bit. You can do it a little bit of your own flavor, even if you want to totally change it, but it had to be recognizable in at least the script to the original. Okay. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, is it recognizable? And how'd you pull it off?
Absolutely. And just keep in mind, we're going to be giving every single entry feedback here and some critiquing as well. But what we
Mhm.
want you to know first and foremost is that the only reason we're doing that is so that you can improve in the fastest way possible. Because we love all of these entries. We think that they're absolutely amazing and we are blown away from them. And to be honest, when you've got something that's absolutely perfect, that's really tough to critique and give feedback on because it's
Yeah.
already so good. I mean, you kind of lose out then because there's not a whole lot we can say to really push you forward. But I think that if you just keep in mind that every single piece of feedback that we're going to be giving you today is there to help you push yourself forward in the way that's going to push you forward specifically the most, then I think that you're going to get a ton of value out of today's reviewing of the sequential SummerSlam entrance. So, and for those watching as well, I mean, you're going to get a ton of value out of it too,
Totally.
just because you're going to be watching the different ways in which other people can improve, and you might be relating with some of that yourself in your
Absolutely.
own work. Cool. Well, let's just
Yeah.
jump straight into it here. We got a lot of entries to
Okay.
go for. We'll be
We
spending
do.
about
Tons.
1 to 2 minutes on each one, and even then, it'll take about 2 hours. So let's do it. Starting with yours, Ed.
Okay, the first one we're going to look at is Brian's here. He was redoing something from the '90s here, right? And I think it's Rob Liefeld. I'm thinking, right? And the first thing that I'm looking for is, generally speaking, I just kind of take a quick look at panel flow, and I'm looking to see how this goes. He brings the flow here. This breaks the panel. I would have liked to see this arm kind of push back this direction. Here, we're over
Oh,
here. We kind of have the body direction pushing down to here, here, kind of static, and another static one. Does it look good? Yes, I think he's doing a good job with it. Um, Overall, I think Brian did pretty good. How does it compare to the original one? This is pretty tough. There's a lot of energy going on in this one. Maybe not always the anatomy that we love. There's some wonkiness going on, but boy, is that ever tough. Like, look at this face. How is he combat? How's Brian dealing with panel one to panel one? Mm, Honestly, I'd give it to the original. I think he's got some really good anatomy going on. Brian's, amazing when it comes to strength and musculature. So there's a lot of big bulbous muscle going on. His faces, Brian, I think achieved really good here. Like I said, the muscular anatomy, I think Brian's good. I kind of wish Blob was a little bit more blobbier, right? Like I think it's good, but I'd like to see little bit more grotesquerie going on, right? So Brian, I think your panel flow is good, your anatomy is good, but the character model, like even here, this, if you would have just shown me just this, would I have guessed it's Blob? I can't say for certain, right? Your framing is good. I think the framing of the shots, but a lot of them are just kind of straight on. Like I'm looking straight on most of these shots. Everything's straight, 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 straight. Maybe you could have considered cutting the panels around or changing the camera angle a little bit. Um, this is where, a lot of people go after Rob for saying that, Rob's got issues. I
Hmm.
I ain't gonna say that. What I'm gonna say is Rob's got strengths, and his strength is a dynamic action energy. I've seen people try to go up against Rob in these little contests and say, "Oh yeah, I can beat Rob Liefeld in my drawings." No, you can't. It is extremely hard. There's a reason why he's sold millions and millions of issues and stuff, and it's because he has got dynamic energy in his panels. So if you're going to bring up, like, try to battle him and stuff, and that's kind of how I look at this a little bit, is he's already laid it down. Can you do better? In this case, damn, that's hard, man. And I'm
It's
gonna give
tough.
it back to Rob Liefeld here and say, Brian, I love you, man. You're awesome and stuff, right? And I've seen so much improvement. This is the first time entering, so this is awesome to complete a page. But standing up against Rob Liefeld is tough, 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 right? So bring your A game. Okay,
Yeah,
you're up on the
well
next
done.
one, man.
Well done for
Oh,
being
is it?
brave.
Is there one you want to say?
Oh no, no. I was just going to say congratulations for going up against Rob Liefeld. He's a tough foe to beat when it
People
comes to.
underestimate him.
Absolutely. All
Yep.
right, so here's the one that I'm going to be taking a look at here.
Yep.
So it goes without saying that it seems like you're a newcomer to the art form. You love drawing comic books, and you've given this your best shot. You're working from a really cool example as well, which is there's just so much that you're going to learn when you're taking an epic page like this and then
Mhm.
doing up your own version of it, looking at it, studying it, trying to improve upon it in some way. So let's take a look at yours and just observe some of the things that you could have taken from the reference that, if implemented into your own, would have made a massive difference. And the first thing you're going to notice, and this is something that comes up for a lot of people, is that especially a lot of people just starting out, is their characters often lack a certain amount of dynamicness, and that can be within the pose. In this case, it is within the pose of your characters, so you can see that they're just kind of standing straight up and down there. They're not really, that their arms aren't really posed in any kind of dynamic direction. We don't get a really solid feel for uh, what kind of actions they're supposed to be taking. They're just kind of standing around in a static, idle pose. So we want to see that emotion coming through, want to see that expression within their body language, whatever it is they're going through. If you look at the reference, you can see this dinosaur dude is leaping right at the guy in front. And of course, the other thing that you could make a little bit more dynamic is your camera shots. Now, you're going to need a bit more experience for that, but you can see within your reference that the dinosaur is like coming. He almost looks like he's about to leap out of the panel. We've got the guy that he's leaping at in the foreground, whereas if we take a look at the one that you did up, they're both on the same view plane, essentially. So none is coming further forward or back. They're all at the same distance to one another, and it just ends up looking, as a result, a little bit flat, which, in the end, we all start out like this,
Mhm.
and you've just got a pathway that you're going to be following, a journey that's going to get you from this to that, the reference that you're following through. So congratulations on this. You put in an immense effort, and I hope that you learned a ton from studying it, from just doing this competition, because there is a ton to learn from something, from a page such as this. Even for me, I don't think I could pull this off. So you've done a really great job, and I want to congratulate you on the effort that you put into this. You should be proud. All
Yeah,
right,
just a
you're up
little add on to
next.
that is his attention to detail in the character designs, really boss. Graham
Yeah.
did a great job there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
For sure. All right. I'll get your next one up, Ed.
Yep. So next
Okay.
one is from Cooper. And this one's
Very
tough
nice.
because, it's a really powerful first page that he's referencing and stuff. And there's this is where, like, getting a good scan, getting a good, being able to really see what's going on here. I absolutely love this hard angle that you're choosing here, Cooper. Okay, like, this is really, really tough. This is really advanced, and I can see what's going on here, that, you're trying to frame it, that he's got this body launch, and instead we're looking down at the body, and the energy's coming out of him. It's like, he's on all these, it's all coming out, right? And we can see it in the skull face here. A really emphasis on that energy. But where it gets lost is I'm really trying to see what's happening here. So I don't know if the original pencils gave more detail or this just wasn't fleshed out or anything, Cooper. But like, there's a lot of potential in this page, and I can see what you did here with this, right? But you needed to keep going. This is what happens is like, this is like, you're like 60% there, and it's looking like, oh my goodness, this is like coming, and then you stopped. And I'm not sure exactly why. Okay. So what I would hope is that you watch this video and you're like, "Mm, yeah," and you finish it, and then you send it back to me. Okay. Like, I think that's really important, is that you finish this project, because I think, like, I can see you're already there. You're already moving in the exact direction you should be moving. Like, I'm not, there's nothing here. Okay, there's one thing that I can see that's kind of bugging me slightly, but maybe not. Is like, here we've got this downward view of his head and everything, and the same shot again. But I kind of like that transition, that maybe the skin got peeled off and that it's just a skull. So maybe, I don't know. You can keep that if that's your storytelling and stuff, right? But the point is that this page needs to be finished. You are on the exact path you should be, but please, please, please finish it. Cool?
Yep, totally.
Okay.
Agree with that.
Okay.
Well done, though. Good effort, my friend. Now, this next one, I am absolutely mind blown by. I don't even know what I'm going to say about it. Um, but who have we got here? I'm not sure who this entrant is. Do you know who it is, Ed?
Yes, I do, and I don't want to say his name.
Oh, hang on a second.
He's our previous champion. He's won a couple times.
Yep, yep. Is it? Oh, Victor Rufino. Wow, Victor. This is just insane. I can't believe what I'm looking at here. I can't
Yeah.
even tell which one is which. Is it the second one?
It's the second one. Yeah,
Yeah, wow. I mean, look, the lettering looks incredible. Look at that lettering. It's
yes.
absolutely beautiful. It reads really well. It's clear. The positioning of the speech bubbles is on point. So they're not obscuring any of the characters. I can see exactly what's going on. Plenty of action. Look at the look at that gesture within the characters. There's just so much movement within them. They're animated on the page. You can
Hmm.
see the facial expression of the characters. There's emotion there. That's what we want to see. You can tell that there is some intense action going on here, and the characters are acting as they should be. They're reacting to it emotionally in the correct way. You know, one of the worst things that you can end up with is a comic book sequence where there's all this crazy stuff happening and the characters just don't look like they're being affected by it whatsoever. It breaks the suspense of disbelief. But here we get to be a part of the action thanks to Victor's brilliant job that he has done. You can see the bullets spraying here, these directional lines. So let's take a look at the readability. You have this beautiful flow from one panel to the next. Look at this hand here. You can see it's in this diagonal direction, leads straight down into this panel. And then where are these guys going? I guess technically they're probably going into this panel, but still, if you look at the just the direction of the perspective, and then the spray of bullets in this panel, that the readability, it just flows so seamlessly, so effortlessly, and that's what we want, is this natural order to the page that makes it and you can see the detail here, all the elements, all the characters, all the action that's happening, and yet it's easy to read. You can tell exactly what's going on. And the panels, there's a lot happening in them, but they don't feel congested. There's breathing room, there's space in it. You can once again make out what the heck is happening. You've got these close up dynamic shots of certain characters and other characters that are far off into the background, giving each and every panel a ton of depth. So there's a lot of good things going on here, and I would argue, I would bet that this page stacks up almost identically to the reference in terms of action, in terms of dynamicness and storytelling, and just the smoothness of the sequence as it plays out. Brilliant job, Victor. As far as what you could improve on, man, I honestly, I actually am a bit stumped on that. I mean, your skill set is really where it's peaking, man. I mean,
Yep.
there's definitely going to be room for improvement. You're always going to be refining your skill set with repetition, but you're really you're smashing it, man. Well done.
So I'm going to jump in and say one thing on this
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
like Victor's doing great. And when I look at Victor's storytelling, I actually think it's more clear or clearer than the previous one. Like if I look at P3 versus his P3, um, Victor tells the clearer story through most of his panels and stuff like that. The one thing that I prefer in the original one, and again, like I love Victor's stuff here by far, but is the white space in P1.
Mm.
There's a story being told by that white space, uh, a silence, and then a breaking of that silence.
Oh, I like that.
And that's an interesting choice that the original artist made. And Victor lost that in his, which is fine because he tells a great story, but there is that silence and that breaking of that silence. That is a storytelling choice. And I think that's very, very interesting. So Victor, I love what you did here, but recognize what the original artist did and then think of how you might incorporate something like that as you go forward in your storytelling.
Mm. I also like the sizing of the panels here, just real quick. I think that that's something that the first page had that Victor's doesn't really have a whole lot of, is just those
Mhm.
dramatic differences in sizing and scale.
Yep.
And but
Yep.
Victor's might also even be more dynamic, to be honest. Some of those shots, it's pretty cool.
Oh, his shots are better and his storytelling is better, but there are some things coming from that first
Mm.
reference that do really well.
Yeah, they
That
work
first
well for
panel,
sure.
the panel sizing, the panel breaks
Yeah.
between what is it, P4 and stuff like that. Victor also tossed in an extra panel here, I believe, and
Oh,
so that mashes up the page a little bit more, right? So
can be tough. Yeah. All
either way,
right.
it's
Next
it's
one.
great stuff. Yep.
Heck yeah, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Okay, next one is Chuck. Uh, Chuck's entry here. Let's see. What do I think of this? I think overall we've got a nice static shot, brings us down into here, brings us up here, a couple eye shots, and then the glug glug glug. Right. When I'm looking at it compared to the original, he changed. His first shot. I actually like his framing of the first shot, the hand on the lip and stuff like that. Like that's a pretty cool choice, Chuck. I dig that. I don't know if I dig all the extra space right here necessarily, but like this framing right here is very, very cool. I kind of prefer their lettering though, versus Chuck's and
Mm.
stuff like that, right? Come down
Yeah.
here, he changed the perspective. Instead of looking up, he's looking down. Is that better? No. There's a big no saying no. And why is it not better? Because here I see her horror. I see his joy, but her horror. Here I see neither. And that's
Mm.
just it. Right. Like I think Chuck as an artist did an awesome exercise here of trying to say, okay, well, I'm looking down, and this is different and I'm changing it. And so as an artist exercise, bang it. But as a storytelling exercise, no. The original artist had the right choice. Okay.
Hmm.
And then when we get into again, we see the horror. Is this showing that horror? This is showing the evil. Yes. But this is not necessarily showing the horror. Right. And
Mm.
so do I get to see the horror, the fear, the on this girl's face? Nowhere. And that's what's missing here. Like I get to see the Joker a little bit, some of the evilness and everything. I'm appreciating that, but the horror on her face, even here, if I was to just take this out and not know the rest of the page, I don't know if this is showing the fear on her face. So Chuck, I think as an artistic exercise, I think you really did a great job here. I think you did awesome. But as in capturing what is vital to this page, you missed it on missing out on her horror.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and just in terms of technical execution, I think if you observe the thickness of the lines in that original one and the way in which they were weighted, some of the rendering techniques that were used, it could really help you to improve the perceived professional quality of your own work too. Just I'm always studying other artists to scratch
Yep.
up on that stuff myself.
Yep.
All right, next
Okay.
up.
Next one.
Oh boy, this is this is Ed's. So, oh boy, I'm gonna have to be real careful here. I don't want to get bench pressed or something. All right, so
This
let's
I
check.
did up. Just a quick thing. I did this up to show
Yeah,
people kind of what expectations were.
yeah. Ed entered the competition. Cool. So let's take a look at this. We've got I mean, we've got a whole different version happening here. So it looks like in this first one, um, is Spider-Man attacking Wolverine? Is he getting the upper hand here, or is that Wolverine?
No, Spider-Man's attacking Wolverine in the original P1.
Right, there you go. And so I think that you actually are showing that better in yours, believe it or not. And your shot is actually a bit more dynamic. You can see that Spider-Man is tackling Wolverine, coming right toward us through the camera. Uh, and I think that you've done a really good job there. You've got a great shot. These directional action lines, though, I think if they had been following a bit more of a perspective, that could have
Mhm.
created more depth within the piece. It's just a very small thing, and you fit them well into the panel. I think this one here, we've got Spider-Man that has now jumped back over here, so that's kind of interesting. I actually would have taken the camera, maybe put it behind Spider-Man's head, and showed Wolverine either like on the ground or getting back up, recovering from the blow that he's just taken from Spider-Man, just to create some dynamic camera switching between the panels, because this is almost like the same shot, right? But with just different things happening. Whereas on this one, of course, you get a whole bunch of different shots, representations of the scene that is playing out. And then in this one down here, we've got a kind of similar deal happening to what was happening in the original, where we're just seeing Wolverine go at Spider-Man. Spider-Man essentially getting out of his way and getting the upper hand on him, and then kicking him up into the sky at the bottom here. And honestly, I think that one thing that could have been improved on with this first initial page that I also believe that you sort of done, but could have been done better, which is just to make it more dynamic. Like put that camera above them, put it below them. Like let's see the force of some of these kicks and punches that Spider-Man is dishing out to Wolverine here, and especially facial expressions. Like I want to see Wolverine's facial expression. Let's see him snarling, saliva dripping out of his mouth as he gets more and more pissed off at Spider-Man. Because Spider-Man is the kind of character that pisses other characters off, right? Especially characters like Wolverine. So yeah, I think you've done a really good overall job, Ed. This is great to see. I know that it had been a little bit of a while since you'd drawn when you tackled this one. So, yeah, really good effort, man. You should be happy with this.
Thanks, man. Um, Usually I say let the art explain, and it is. And so, like I said, when I was trying to do this, it was more about showing people that hey, you could take an original and do it in your style. So my style is a little bit more cartoony, slightly more cartoony, especially in the coloring aspect and stuff like that. And but I wanted to try to also capture the script and everything. On those bottom ones, what I was hoping to do was have it like a far shot, a medium shot, and a close shot, and I didn't really pull it off. And there was a now when I
Mm.
look back, there's a lot of things that I didn't really pull off, and and
Amen.
fine, but it worked. The page works. It tells the story that it wanted to, and that's that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
We can tell
Ooh,
that they're having a disagreement.
yeah.
All right, you're
I
up
actually
next,
like
my
my
friend.
lettering in it.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was happy with. I was like, it's been a while. A
Yeah,
couple little spots that I don't necessarily like, but overall was pretty good lettering. So I was happy with
totally. No, I agree with that.
it. Okay. Next one here. Geez. 19 early or late 80s X-Men here, I think.
Old
I don't
school.
know who the original artist was. This okay, so when I'm looking at what this artist did, I really like it, but they basically just redrew the original page
Hmm.
without really changing anything. The only thing they really changed a little bit, for the most part, is the rendering. The like when I'm looking at what they changed here and stuff, the one, two, three, four, five, P5, they brought Colossus closer. You know, they chopped the framing here, right? Which I
Hmm.
appreciate. I actually think Colossus is very menacing here. And I like the
Looks good.
zoom in. It takes away a little bit of the limpness of the leg and stuff like that. So as a stylistic choice, I'm like, meh, one or the other, but I like what they did here. But really, like, there's a little bit of changing. It's obviously not traced very, very clearly and stuff, right? But the storytelling is the only thing that's really changed is P5, right? So
Hmm.
when it comes to storytelling, absolutely no change of poses, no change of anything. And so I can't really give feedback on that. Can I give feedback on the rendering? Yes. Did they do a better job rendering? Maybe. Do I like his face more and his hair? Yes. Better job rendering that way. But do I feel that this is metal? Maybe not. Right.
Mm.
I think they did a good job on Colossus here for the metal. I really like this. But this small hatchy doesn't really scream metal to me.
Yeah.
This rendering in P4 does not scream metal. Here, it's also gets a little hatchy, like around his face, and I could see the shine and stuff like that. But where's more of the like this one? I think P2 really caught. Why is it? It's a snap ruler. Really caught the metal and Colossus. I thought a lot better. But the other pieces of Colossus, and I'm kind of the biggest Colossus fan around, right? So I'm being a little bit harsh on it, but I don't know if other than P2 and P3, if he really caught the metal shine as well as I would have hoped, right? Because like I said, I'm not critiquing the storytelling, the flow, anything like that. I am looking at the rendering here. And when because that's kind of all I've got to look at, right? And out of the rendering, I'm not sure you accomplish what you would hope to accomplish.
Yeah, this is a great example of a study, and they can be very valuable in and of themselves. So, I mean, and you've nailed this study. In terms of technical drawing ability, that's definitely something you've got going for you. So,
Oh,
well
one quick
done there.
thing. Where's the stars? This is the whole point. He gets hit with all these little throwing stars from the spin. They're missing. There's no impact,
Mm.
right? So that's a crucial part of the storytelling as well. So obviously, Ryan can draw. Ryan's awesome. That's not it. But I think Ryan's missing out on Colossus shine, storytelling, and where's your flavor?
Hmm.
Yep.
All
Cool.
right.
Oh, you get another one.
I got another one.
Another big one
So, this is crazy. Um,
from
is
Victor.
this is this
This
Victor
is
again?
he sent a second one in.
Oh my goodness. This guy, there's no stopping him, is there?
Mm-mm.
So, you know what? This obviously goes without saying. It looks absolutely killer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love the panel layout. I think you've done a really good job there. Definitely measures up to the original. And there's lots of wonderful dynamicness happening within the pose and the camera shots and the action that's unfolding within every panel. You know, I think that in your last panel here at the bottom of the page, that the original actually had a little bit more emotional gravitas going, a little bit more expression happening within Thor. And you also had maybe some what you've done is you've sort of swapped out that for a maybe more dynamic representation of the other characters in the background. You brought those forward. You've lowered the camera so that now we're sort of looking up at them, which I guess in a sense is actually a little bit more dynamic than the previous version. But it would have been good to see Thor get a little bit more movement within his pose, where he's in the original he's kind of reaching out. Maybe you could have had him reaching out with his hammer there, get that a little bit more in the foreground somehow, and just uh, yeah, that would have pushed the depths more, pushed the drama that was happening within that scene. I like that you've avoided any direct front or side shots, which we saw a lot of in the original. You got some direct side shots there, so you've avoided that. That's good to see. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not. Middle panel looks good. You've got Iron Man coming in here, scaring these little alien dudes off.
Scroll. They're the
Skrull, that's
scroll.
what they are. Yep, yep. And yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, I
Okay,
love
so
the
I'm gonna
expressions
jump.
on their face, and it's good stuff. Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
I'm just gonna jump and say I love lots of things, but where is Victor's set? Because in the original page, I know the setting.
Ah,
In his page, I
yep.
don't. He lost it.
There's no establishing shot.
Right. There's no establishing shot. And depending on what came before this page, maybe that establishing shot is needed. Right. And he dropped it. And I love what he did, but I don't love that he dropped that establishing shot. So
Hmm.
that's it makes me kind of scratch my head and wondering, like, oh, who do you think you are, Victor? Like the thing is, there's an establishing shot for a reason. When if it's there for a reason. So
Hmm.
what reason did you have to get rid of it? Better be freaking good because it's needed.
Yeah, we want to know where we are, where we're situated
Yep.
within the world, and what scene's taking place. But yeah, man, these ones are always difficult for me to critique personally because it's hard for me to spot areas for improvement when it's this good. So well done. I do
Mhm.
like. I love the veins within Thor's arm. I think that's fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah,
the rendering, the drawing is off the hook. It's
yeah,
just choices.
yeah, it's yeah, fantastic. So great stuff. Establishing shots, include them next time.
Yep. Okay, next one
Let's
is
go, Ed.
Edgar. And original had 4 panels. Next one had his version had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels. That's a bit of a jump, right? And so it's something to think of. Now, do these panels flow pretty well? From 1 to 2, up 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, generally, we're looking at um it seems to work pretty well, right? Like I'm liking how it looks. Um, is there anything I don't like? Like the storytelling of the original, I get to see the whole Sentinel's body. This one, it's kind of just the head, and it's a little malformed, but it looks good. We jump up to her face. I guess I'd wonder why. Like I like this first frame. I like how it looks, but what is her without saying anything? Just like ah, what is that telling me? Right? Then we come down into another panel where it's almost a duplicating the first panel because in the first panel, um, oh, hold on, no, we got two different characters here. First panel is a short hair, kind of reminds me of like Phoenix, maybe. Second panel is
Hmm.
Storm, or I mean P3 is Storm, right? We've got a couple. So
Yep.
I don't know who the M girl is, but she's a short hair girl, and then we got Storm zapping it. The same one, another one, hard to tell. Then we've got
Yeah.
Colossus and Wolverine doing the fastball special, which I'm kind of geeking out over. A nice, tight shot of Wolverine's eyes with, him talking to Colossus and then him shredding. This, I dig the storytelling here. This, especially because we've got two characters in the same suit from the same kind of angle of attacking the Sentinel. There's some confusion now. You know, I dig the X-Men, so I recognize their Storm, and coloring might help a little bit when once we slap colors on this to differentiate, right? But this is a little too framing and setup too similar, and then I'm still questioning what's going on here. So overall, panel flow works. Drawing is freaking great. I love your style, Edgar. I think it's really good. This A to B repeat. That's where my question would be. Why you have that in there and stuff. Any thoughts,
No, I
Clayton?
think I pretty much agree with what you said. It is really hard to tell what's going on in that top section. I'm still not convinced that they are two different characters. It
They
seems
gotta
almost
be.
like that they have to be, right? It's just with
Yeah,
the Sentinel there as a commonality, and then the suit and the design of the character. It's
yeah,
pretty hard to tell, but you know, still amazing drawing job. I think you've got the skills there. It's just about the storytelling. So much more to drawing comic books than just being able to draw.
totally, totally.
Cool.
Next.
All right, let's take a look at this one. So here we have another example of an entrant who has gone ahead and essentially replicated what was there before. And this is really great as a study, a lot to learn from when you're looking at the original page that was done really well, and then you're copying it and you're trying to do as good, if not better, and really learning along the way. But as far as your own creativity and ability to tell a story, challenging yourself to come up with your own camera angles, as if you were a director directing this very same scene, you really miss out a lot on that. So rather than focusing on the storytelling aspect, which obviously, I mean, you could have gone for if you wanted to with this competition, let's take a look at your technical drawing ability and how well you've executed that. So I think there's a really tough camera angle with this guy that you're looking directly down at him. And so, what do you have to do? You have to foreshorten his entire body as a result. And so, you can see that that's the perspective that we're looking at him on. But I don't really feel that. This looks very, even though it's in perspective, it looks very flat. What we want to do is actually be turning that into a cube. We want to have some muscles coming out there, and we want to feel the roundness of his torso. We also want to make sure that where his groin ends is appropriate as it leads into his legs, because remember that pelvis is going to the bottom of the pelvis is going to sit at the halfway mark of the overall height of the body. And so if his feet go down to here, then that's not really the overall height of his body. That should be the bottom of his pelvis right here. Okay, and then we've got uh, Devil having a good talking to with him, and punching him in the face. So, just in terms of execution of the foreshortening aspects of things, I think you've got a little bit more work to do there. So do a couple of studies actually foreshortening anatomy, see whether or not you can get a better handle on that. Watch how the muscles deform in perspective as they're pulled back in space. And I think that's going to really help you to improve shots like this one here. His head, I think, is far too big for the rest of his body in this particular uh, snapshot of the scene. But yeah, those are the main areas that I think you can improve on. When you're working with dynamic shots like that, foreshortening becomes a really big thing to get right. And so, if you're looking for an area to study, somewhere to practice, that would be what I would suggest for you. But great job overall. Thanks so much for entering the competition. You've
Clayton
you
said it
put in
all
a great
except for
effort.
one thing. When we're drawing a face, eyes generally are halfway down the
Mm,
head. Just keep
yep,
that in mind. Okay.
totally.
Okay. Next one is Salvador.
Cool.
Interesting because this is tackling a very stylized original, and then it's a stylized take on it, right? Less stylized in I would say actually. It's a little bit more realistic, right? But it's still very stylized. But nothing changed. Every camera shot was the exact same. Um, the only thing that they did was just kind of draw it a little bit more in their style and stuff. There was no choices happening here, right? Which that's fine, but it means that now I've got to look at, just no directing choices, so it's just anatomy, um, just drawing skill, and I think that on just drawing skill, it actually really works. I'm looking at it. I'm like, listen, it's relatively consistent. The only thing I might say is like, I was just talking about head size and stuff like that. So if here's the head, it just seems like the face is a little long on the bottom compared to
Mm.
the top of the head here.
Proportions are an issue
Yeah,
with this one
the
for sure.
proportions are a little bit off, right? Um, Yeah,
even on
the
the body
proportions are a
side.
little bit off. The lower part of the head here is a little long, but you know what? It's funny because that's consistent for that so far. That's consistent in that character or your style, right? Yeah, I like what you did here, Salvador. I think it's a really good job. I kind of wish I would have saw a little bit of more of you, like your take on things a little bit more. You pushing it a little bit more. Um, is this in perspective? I don't know. A couple of your chances of showing perspective, I don't know if they're exactly landing, man. Like yeah, like this straight on shot works. This one looking down at her kind of works. Although, look at the size of her legs compared to her head here, right? Like uh, a little bit of your fundamentals in perspective. I think you could take another stab at that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep,
But awesome effort, man. It's
cool.
good to see.
Yep,
Okay, we've got another piece here by
Miguel.
Miguel. Miguel. Beautiful page to try and retake. Now, let's take a look at the first panel here. You've switched up the camera positioning. Very creative there. Good to see. You really thought about how you would shoot this scene. Um, and I think you've done a pretty good job. Look, the perspective of the characters is maybe a little bit off here. Some technical drawing improvements that you could make. So, the next time you're setting something like this up, just make sure that you're thinking about that stuff. I think just the angle of her body might not be quite what it should be, and also the proportions. Like her her butt here, I'm not sure that that's in the right spot that it should be in, according to the rest of her body. So just looking out for things like anatomy, making sure that everything's drawn in the correct perspective for the shot that you're choosing would be an area for you to focus on. And then in this second panel, it's it's nice and dramatic. I like it a lot. You've sort of taken from this one down here too, which follows a similar theme. But it would have been interesting to see how you could mix that up more dynamically, whether you're taking the shot from above or below or on a bit more of an angle. You could make it the opposite direction to the first one and really push the rhythm of those switching camera modes. Then you've got the panel below that, which really gives us a nice close up, again, dynamic action shot here. So I guess you got it in there in the end anyway. And I like the panel styling that you've gone for, the way you've shaped it out. It shows the the savageness of the action that's unfolding within that scene. But again, we've got some perspective issues going on here that links directly back up with the anatomy. In other words, there's parts of the body that I shouldn't be able to see as much of, supposedly based on the camera angle that you decided to choose for these characters. And then, these last few panels are fairly basic, but you know what? That's really what the original page is showing. And I think maybe what you could have done is, keep this one. This one's great, but maybe show this woman from the side view or more of an upward turned shot. And I think that would have just increased the amount of interest that is going on within the camera setups of those panels. But overall, amazing work, technical drawing ability. You need a little bit of improvement as far as the perspective and some of those proportions and anatomy is concerned, but otherwise, you're really on the right track. Well done.
I'm just gonna jump in and add the original artist showed the faces constantly through all the panels.
Hmm.
Those characters were key, and they showed the faces for them. Maybe there was a reason for that. This, it's Miguel chose not to, and I'm not sure that was always a right choice. I get it sometimes, but for example, let's say P1 is the first time we're seeing that black-haired introduction. Like we know Red Sonja, right? So maybe this is like whoever the Queen of the Black Coast or whatever, right? If that's her introductory panel and that's the first time we're seeing her, we better damn well see her face, right? That's important. And I'm not sure what came before this. I don't know, but this is the first time I'm seeing it here. I want to see her face. And if you're not showing her face, better be a really strong reason why in storytelling why you're not doing that. and I
Yeah.
don't feel that you clued into that. That I think that's important. We needed to see the face.
Yeah. It does depend on what came before too, of course.
Yep.
But we don't know that. So yeah, show that face. All right,
Yep.
Ed. Let's see who's up
Okay.
next.
The next one is from Jamal. Uh Tackling Jim
Classic.
Lee. Wow, that's super ambitious, right? Like pretty tough to do. Do I like the way he laid this out? Honestly, he laid it out almost the exact same way it was laid out before. We've got a headshot. He switched it slightly to a 3/4, but we got a headshot. Changed the character though, and then he changed. Oh, okay. He went through and changed the characters to most likely his own characters and stuff, right? So I kind of dig that. I get what he's doing. Um, First, like, so the layout is the same. So I'm not gonna. He didn't really change the layout here. Not any choices. Did he accomplish the layout? No. Like, one, this wall is not in perspective. We're not really looking down at this. The characters that Jim Lee has presented were up front and in our face. When I look at his characters, they're starting to blend into the wall. They're really far away. We've got proportional problems with like the size of the leg compared to the size of the head, right? I would have rathered Jamal. There's a lot of good things going on here. I love that you have your own characters. I think that's freaking awesome, right?
Heck
But
yeah.
why are the characters not this size? Why are we not looking at these characters in the original sizing that coming through here? And so I could really look at your characters. You want to show me your characters? Let me see them. Right now, they're small and they're not as punchy as they should be, and that carries over into P4. I can barely make out what's happening here. Now, the original artist was able to do that through color. Like maybe in the inks, it's a little confusing, but he punches it through color. In yours, it loses all connection. I cannot make out what's happening and stuff. There's a lot of even with looking over here, it's still really hard to make out what's going on and stuff, right? So I love that you chose your original characters for this. I think it's makes me happy, man, because I love people creating their own characters and stuff. But I think the lessons that Jim Lee laid down, you should have taken the heart. Bring the characters forward and make it clear. Cool, man.
Hmm. Cool. Awesome stuff. Yeah, tough one to tackle. Jim Lee is one of the OGs, the '90s image era. So
Yep.
yeah, good on you. I hope there's lots that you learned there. All right, so now we're looking at Kurt's piece that he's done up, and you've taken a scene from The Watchmen by the looks of it. Well, as we're looking at Rorschach here, and obviously you're on the path like the rest of us. You still got quite a journey to go, but at least you're in here doing the competition. You're putting in an effort. In saying that, there are a lot of things that you're going to be able to change up along the way that's going to allow you to improve and get your work to that really professional standard that stands out from the rest. One of the things that you're going to be able to do is to just make your camera shots way more dynamic. So take a look at this one where we're looking directly from the back at Rorschach in panel number 1, directly from the front in panel number 2, directly from the front in panel number 3, directly at the side of Mr. Manhattan, Dr. Manhattan, right, in panel number 4, looking directly from above. There's a lot of direct front, side, back, above shots here that, aren't really that dynamic. It causes them, especially when there's so many of them in this level of succession, causes the whole page to look flat. Now, here, when you've got one of them, great. Throw one in once in a while to make a point. But, with this first one, you could have easily had a shot of him looking up, a shot of him here, looking down, just really mixing things up, and also in, let's bring the camera in tight on Rorschach in one of these shots. It's all about variation. How many ways can you vary up the shot from before to make it different, to create some contrast, to increase the level of interest across the entire page? That's what we're talking about in terms of camera angle, in terms of the pose of the character's body, and how can we present them and what's happening to them, what the scene is that's unfolding in the most memorable manner possible. So I think that's one main area for you to work on. Obviously, in terms of technical drawing ability, you're going to want to start looking at the different art styles that are out there, ways in which you can incorporate line weighting, rendering styles, whether or not you decide to light your characters a dramatic shadow or barely any detail at all. That's all stuff for you to look into on your own time. And by doing studies like this of the Watchmen and other different artists, comic books out there, you're going to be able to get a real feel for what it is that the direction that you naturally tend toward within your own work. But in terms of a taking the shot at this, good job, awesome effort, and you should be proud of yourself.
Just one little thing that I think you could have done, Kurt. There's a lot of good stuff here, but I think if you would have added in snowflakes.
Yeah,
Like right
for
now,
sure.
the background looks really plain. I get it. It's snow and it's like a bleak or whatever, but this also could be sand. It's kind of yellowish and stuff like that, right? And unless people are pissing all over it, snow doesn't always have that yellow hue to it. So like adding snowflakes, flurries coming in or whatever, I think it would have just brought it. It would have, added more to what are kind of flat scenes.
Totally.
Yep.
All right. Let's take a look at the next one, Ed.
Now, I'm a big fan of this one. Jeremy's entry. The
Oh, I
reason
love it.
why I'm a big fan is because I love these colors. Like I love the tonal value here and stuff like that. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, Jeremy decided to bump and add another 3 panels to this page, right? That's an interesting decision. I kind of like it. It surprisingly doesn't clutter his page. Like for an 8
Hmm,
panel page, Jeremy's pulling this off. The
he is,
writing,
yeah.
let's see if I zoom just a little bit.
Mm.
Geez, that
Writing
writing
needs to
is
be bigger.
tight. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what display he was working off of, but like if I compare the original to this one, even at a roughly same sizing, right? I cannot read the lettering going on Jeremy's. That's one problem that I'm looking at is the legibility. If I'm looking at the panel flow from one to the next, she's looking down, brings me over, and then it brings me here. I kind of wish it would bring me around, but overall, he's laid out the panels that I have no choice but to follow. So I think he's doing okay in there. I already said I really love the colors here, but some of the anatomy that this head construction that's going on here, quite elongated and stuff like that. It has me a little worried on occasion and stuff like that, right? Like she's there's nothing wrong with her head and everything, but this is almost the center of the page, and just the way everything contrasts. A lot of things are bringing my eye right here, and that's not the strongest drawing on this page. There's a lot stronger faces and colors and everything else, but it brings me right here, and so it kind of pisses me off because I actually really, really like this page, and everything is so much direct me to maybe the weakest part of the page here, right? Overall, though, like I like the most of the choices of storytelling. I'm just kind of piecing it together. I like some of the angling and stuff I got. I like this that I'm just seeing the back of her as he walks away. Yeah, like listen, even the angles here, there's so much that I love about this page. I just am a little bit stuck right dead center.
Hmm. It actually looks pretty professional, this page, and I can see why you like the coloring style. It's not unlike your coloring style, Ed. In fact, I
Yes.
wouldn't be surprised if this wonderful, wonderful artist took one of your coloring courses and
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
is
Yeah.
maybe putting it to good use. Yeah, good stuff.
Mhm.
All right, let's jump over to this one here. This looks like some classic Marvel art that you're referencing. And who have we got? Oh, Oswaldo.
Mhm.
Beautiful entry. Um, I can tell you put a lot of time and thought into this first panel. with the character at the top here. Look, I think he could have gotten away just like with the original panel, just not adding in a background at all. If you are going to go add in a background, though, go all the way. Get some references up and take a look at what kind of lighting you could add into the background there, what kind of architecture could incorporate, just filling out those details to make a really believable scene. Now, there's something weird and strange going on with the perspective, even though you might have measured it up and really tried to get it right. It does, for some reason, somehow look as though she is sitting too low within the scene for where the perspective is positioned. It's almost as if she's on a step lower than what the rest of the flooring is. So just something to look out for. We've got a few proportional issues happening. At least that's what it appears as. Now, if I measure with my hands where the rest of her body should be as opposed to her head, yeah, there's something a little bit strange going on. And sometimes with proportional issues, it can be hard to place your finger on what exactly, whereabouts it's going wrong. But it's just something for you to maybe look out for and pay attention to the next time around. But you picked a nice dynamic pose for this character where she's bringing the glass into the foreground, right up against the camera, cheersing the other people around her. It works fairly well. It's a direct front mode shot, so maybe that can lead to something which is a little less dynamic, a little less visually interesting. But I think you've made up for that in different ways. And then on the following panels, we've got Wolvo's hands, similar to the original page. I think that's looking pretty good. Maybe it would have been good to see a more interesting pose for him. It looks like he's just floating on his back or belly here, but he's supposed to be sort of awake, right, reaching out of the water. So what did he suddenly wake up from this positioning and reach out of the water? Maybe there's something where he's kind of drifting along, sort of still conscious looking, and then he jumps out of the water. He looks like he's about to attack someone here, though, in this last panel. It's a great shot of Wolverine. Really well done. Lots of dynamicness happening. A few anatomy issues, which happens when you're doing these dynamic shots. But the thing is that it looks like he's about to leap out of the water and attack somebody. I also want to see that he is leaping out of water. So let's get that background content in there, show that he's still in the sewer system, some pipes happening, and show that he's leaping out the water. But maybe that again, we don't want it to look as though he's attacking somebody. We want it just to look like he's coming to, he's woken back up, and now he's re-emerging. So just think about the context of what's actually happening in order to decide what poses you choose for your characters and how you decide to frame them within the shot. But otherwise, excellent work, great job, congratulations on bringing this through to completion for the competition. You should be happy with what you've done here.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on all those points, man. I think it's good.
Awesome, man. Cool. Let's take a look at the next one. Moving on.
Ronan.
Oh,
Okay, so Ronan chose the exact same framing and storytelling. The only thing that I could see he changed was her mouth,
hmm.
fundamentally,
Hmm.
right? And so when I'm really looking at it, like, okay, the tornadoes turn, like, he didn't trace this at all, but I'm just looking at it and saying, okay, well, is anything changing from the original? Slightly turn of the funnel of the tornado. Does that change anything? Um, I actually prefer his lettering, especially that darn him and stuff like that. And I like Roman's attempt at a little bit of a more of a snarl, I guess.
Hmm.
I kind of like Storm being a little bit more feral when she's accessing her weather powers and stuff, right? So I
Yeah.
like that passion in this. And so his drawing's great. His hair's great. But other than that, like there's no changes. Everybody's just standing around doing the same thing. Everything's the same. The one thing that really bothers me is this freaking hand. What is happening? And I'm going to say this kindly because Ronan, I like you, but it looks like AI took over this hand and it's pissing me off. This knuckle, this thing that's happening here, this break, my fingers don't do that. I don't know how they do that. I don't understand it. So
Hands
like,
are tough.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Let me zoom in on this one. See if he. Meh. It's kind of there.
What's the original hand look like? It kind of looks like a bit odd too.
It does too. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not
What the
loving either
heck
of
is
these
going
hands.
on there?
So I don't know if Ronan was like, meh, this hand is borked. I'm gonna draw the a borked hand again or something like that. I
Hmm.
don't know. But
Oh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Not even like, yeah. Like, so if you're not going to change the storytelling, then I'm going to go after the anatomy, or I'm going to go after anything. And like it's a she's well drawn, generally speaking, and stuff. There's not a lot of errors going on. It's kind of the same posing that what happened in the original, so no choices there, anything like that. So we've changed the snarl, and we've got an ugly hand. Not much else to say on this. Do you know what I mean? Like, man, I dig your drawings, and I bet you can draw tons. But
Cool style. I love his
I love
style.
the style, but not much is changing, not much is happening here, right? Other than you just kind of transplanted it, right? Like there's really when we look at even the style, like is it really that big of a change from the original? Slightly, but not really. If we looked at the original inks here and we bring it over here, there's not a whole lot of difference going on, right?
Hmm.
Okay. Any thoughts on this, Clay?
No, I pretty much agree with what you said. I like your style. I think you're actually really good at drawing too. But yeah, I mean, as far as the study, you've done a good job. I think you've replicated it quite well. But if you want to get a little bit more creative next time, don't be shy.
Yep.
Get crazy with it. Okay, let's take a look at Mike's piece. He's done a Ninja Turtle
Hmm.
sequence. Awesome to see the Ninja Turtles make an appearance. Okay, so Mike, we got an all-out fight scene happening with the first panel, bringing us straight into the action here. Um, Look, I think it's really great as a starter, but if you wanted to enhance a shot like this, you'd really want to get a bit more inventive with the camera positioning itself and how it's what direction it's shooting the turtles from. This is a very flat, straight on, almost looks like the Mario Brothers have taken over screenshot, right? Where we're looking at a platform that they've been given, a bit of a background in the beat behind them, and it works. I think it's pretty cool, but when it comes to comic books, you really want to try to make these shots as interesting as you possibly can. And I think the content of the panel, while that looks great, it could have been presented in a bit more of a visually uh, impactful manner. Which he did do in the second panel. You got this Ninja Turtle coming right out at us. Great to see. And then you're shooting him from behind here, and then you got the other turtle on the opposite side of him. There's this interesting symmetry going on with that middle strip of panels, which I don't know if it necessarily works. You're almost sort of bringing the eye down here, up here, and then back down here again, rather than down to here where it should be going to that last panel. So the flow is a little bit messed up. Looks cool though. As individual images, these look cool. Do they work with the sequence? Maybe not as much. I'm also not exactly sure what's going on with this middle panel. Is he attacking somebody? Are we just getting a good look at him from
No,
behind? Is this like a photo
they're biting
shoot
onto the bow staff.
onto the staff?
The
Right.
little
Okay.
robot guys are biting onto his staff.
Oh, I see what's happening. Right. I didn't quite make out what was going on
It's
there.
and there you go,
Gotcha.
right? It's
Okay,
tough.
so you got to make that stuff clear, right? Because there's dumb people like me out there that are going to look at this and they're not going to know what's going on. So you gotta really make it visually explanatory for the readers out there who might not catch on straight away. I always get lost in comic books for some reason, but yeah. And then you've got this bottom shot, which I think is pretty cool. But again, same as with the top one, I think you really could have mixed it up and got really inventive and creative with it. Otherwise, the rest is awesome. Some improvement on the technical drawing side, but you've really given it your best shot with the rendering and the shadows and the line art and all that good stuff. So it's just up, uh, up and beyond for you going forward. I think as you practice more and you refine your craft, you're going to get better and better and see that improvement that you're looking for.
Yeah,
Awesome
I
stuff.
agree with everything Clayton said. I love a lot of the rendering here and stuff like that. Like a lot of choices and stuff. I'm looking at the brickwork and everything. But this first panel, that's a busted up foot, man. I don't know what's happening there.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, that first panel, Donatello's foot is
Oh, I missed that at
pretty,
first.
pretty
He's
messed up.
kicking someone's head.
He might have broke his foot on that kick then, because that's how it's looking. Yeah.
Cool. All right,
Okay.
let's move on to the next one here, Ed.
Next one is Keith.
Cool. Keith.
Um, okay, we've got Spawn or Venom rather, Carnage and Spidey. In the original, pretty that's tough to handle. There's a lot of things going on there and stuff like that. When I look at Keith's entry, uh, it's hmm,
Hmm.
it's hard to understand, and I don't mean that because I would love to see the line work, but he's used such dark shadows that to make out the figures and some of this what's going on and stuff is just clouded over and stuff. It's kind of hard to see what's going on here, right? Um Whereas in the original we've got the characters and they punch and you could see them clearly, and it's kind of strong, you know what I mean? When I look at key stuff, I actually think his construction, like the figure construction from what I can see, looks really good. Like I'm looking at his anatomy, I'm like, kind of looking around and I think I like it, but I can't really see it. I dig that he did a kind of painterly style here, and that he was rendering and getting into it and stuff. And there's a lot of good things happening with that, but it's just so shadowed out, so overly shaded that it's hard. And I understand he's trying to go with the setting, and it's maybe a choice. I'm just gonna say I don't think this choice always worked for every panel. Like I kind of like P2, the mystery going on there as he looks back. But I can even see what's going on. He's got like a rim light on either side. He's got lighting going on. There's a lot going happening here. I don't like that mouth, right? But there's just everything is so dark here and everything. Like it just to me, it's taking away from it. And if it's a choice, it's a choice. I get it. But
It's
for
got to be
me
readable.
as the viewer, I don't know if I necessarily agreed or loved that choice. Another quick thing, just watch the lettering, how close you get to the edges. This one should have been like, "You're jealous because I was certifiable long before ever," and it should have tapered out. It should have formed into that block a little bit better there,
Mm,
right? It's good,
cool.
but I can't see it all. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the main thing going on with this. It needs to be changed up, but otherwise, yeah, I can tell you put in a lot of work to it.
yes, yeah.
Cool. All right, next up we've got we have got the Callaways. So, brothers or sisters both worked on this?
I don't know.
The Callaways. All right. So we've got Ghost Rider here. Good to see Ghost Rider. And you maybe cut down the panel count, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So nice impactful shot happening in this first panel. In terms of storytelling, look, you got the same kind of thing happening, which is cool. He lands his bike over here, right? So I'm not quite sure what's going on. That's the first thing, and I'm not even sure what's quite going on in the original. So yeah, I don't know what that tells you. That could be me, it could be the page, but he kind of it looks like he lands his bike, and then right. So is he just scaring these guys?
I think he scared them, and then something comes over him, and he loses. The Ghost Rider fades away, and he
Right. Okay.
becomes back to the person.
I see what you're saying. So yeah, I do think that that sequence could be improved, just in general, whether it's a first page or your page or whatever it is. Me as a reader, I want to know, not just through the text. I don't want to have to necessarily have to read all the text. I want to see what is actually unfolding and be able to interpret that imagery, and understand it for what it is, in an impactful way, in a way that hits home, right? If he is kind of regretting what's happening, and he's like, not quite happy with himself, then I should really see that without a doubt. Like that should be, and that should come through the camera shot, the lighting, the mood, the tone of the scene, and yeah, I think overall you've done a pretty good job with this top action scene. Obviously, it can be improved, and with time, you're going to take a look at different aspects of your approach to art and address the ones that could be better, that could be upgraded. But for now, as far as the storytelling is concerned, I do think that that's probably the biggest area for improvement here. But as far as the effort you put into this, it takes a lot to actually execute an entire page such as this. And so I got to really commend you on that effort. It's no small feat, and I congratulate you for the creativity you put into retelling the sequence. But yeah, like I said, I do think that both of these pages could be improved in terms of just the visual storytelling alone.
Clayton, do me a favor, throw my page up here.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Something that's bugging me here, and I just want to say it. Here's a perspective. We should be following this perspective then, right? But then we've got these hands are straight on to us. They are not in this turned perspective. I should be able to see the sides of these hands as this is turned much like this. Do you know what I mean? Like I should be able to see if the wheels turn that much, well, the hand should turn that much as well, right? Everything should be turning, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we get into some perspective issues that this whole thing should be turned because he's cranking that front wheel. But this face reminds me of a face that was drawn straight on and then selected, edit, transform. Let's go with free transform and just kind of adjusted so that now the face is like this or something like this and put on it or something. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not working. Okay, like that is a flat on face, and not only that, there's no neck. Like the flat on face has been dropped and just skewed. But I'm not looking at a skull from the angle at all. You know what I mean? This is a flat skull with no curvature to it or anything like that that has been dropped mid level into his chest.
Hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Um,
right.
I realized I drew over it. I didn't want to do that. Next one is marquee. Uh this boy, how are you gonna follow this original page? Like that's a tough one to follow, right? This
It's
uh
hardcore.
yeah, I
Very
the
good.
coloring, the framing of it and stuff like that. Marquee really is tackling something big here. I like his P1. I like the framing. We've got a foreground, we've got a midground and a background. The anatomy needs work though, right? Not on the foreground character. He's actually done quite a good job, but I think that's because he got to reference this one a lot, right? On this one, he was kind of winging a little bit more, and it kind of fell apart. I like the throw, kind of cool. Although the throw, just so you know, it doesn't come from where the hand is down, right? That action line will come from more of the shoulder or something, right? This impact of the rock, I don't think it really has the impact that the original panel did. And we've got a whole lot of space here. So unless there's going to be a lot of dialogue going on, I don't know what's happening. And then this is what we run into in the next one is we've got all this empty space for what? What is the choice that we're doing this for? Whenever we make these choices, Marquis, when we're talking about it, like why? Your P1 even though the anatomy is a little bit off, is a structurally sound panel. Everything from there, it makes me question a little bit. We've got nice, decent figure work here in P4, but copped out on the background there, man. And you're not really. I feel like you telephoned that background in, right? You could have punched harder on that. Okay.
Yeah. I can
Yep.
kind of see what you were doing though, like what you decided to go for. Even if what Ed's saying is true, you tried to go for that more like it's almost like a manga shot, right? Where it's you see those action lines happening in the background, but yeah, you can always add more into these things to make it more impactful.
And does that? Here's the thing: horizontal lines does not give impact. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Like that might give speed, but in this case, it doesn't even look like speed. It looks like horizontal static.
mm,
Impact punch moves like this. If we've got
dynamic,
a
yes.
centered frame action, we want to make it impactful. And, that's why we have those impact lines. That's not what's done here. Right.
That's
So
exactly it.
I'm not giving you a hard time, man. There's a lot of goodness. And like I said, P1 is good. But Marquis, I think, uh, yeah, you could have stepped up the game in the later panels and stuff.
All right, let's take a look at who is next. Ah, a classic shot. Spider-Man and the symbiote, and Craig. This one's yours. Yeah, nice work, man. Hey, I like that you went ahead and you decided to add in a background element that Spider-Man was sitting on. Give him a little bit more context within his environment. That's very nice. I just don't know what that background element is. I'm guessing that it's whatever the symbiote was in before. And I'm just assuming that's what's happening here. This
Well,
is the
this
first
is
time
on
he's
the
got this
Secret
symbiote
Wars.
suit.
It's on the Secret Wars planet. So there's
Yeah,
these like little space buildings and stuff like that, and you could see it in the
gotcha.
original one, so I think he was riffing off of that.
Ah, I see what you're saying. Cool. So it's kind of still sticks in with the theme. So with that new additional piece of information that Edge has given me, because I'm so out of the loop on some of this comic book stuff, I love that you added in that additional background element because it really does. It not only situates him within the world, grounds him there, but it also pulls us in as the viewer and gives it a little bit more context as to where he is and what we're seeing, where we're being brought to. Very important. So I'm glad that you did that. And then in the bottom panel, yeah, I mean, I would say that you've done a very similar thing. It's different, but still of the same level of quality, of impact. Now, in terms of yeah, yeah, I think you've done a great job with that actually. So yeah, nice to see. Because his legs are sort of up like that. You might have been able to enlarge him a little bit, but or just in terms of you, if you were going to improve upon it, make that angle more dynamic. Like you could have had him leaping off of this thing into the sky. We could have had it down here, and that just even though it's different to the original, it could have been a bit more of a dynamic improvement on what we were seeing previously. And then in this final shot, love it. I think it works really well. I like that you made Xavier sort of a ghost. Like he's not supposed to be really there, so it's quite appropriate what you've done here. And I like that Mister Stretchy here, Mister what's he
Mr.
called?
Fantastic.
Mr. Fantastic. His head is stretching up to show, so he's showing his powers a little bit there. That's good to see. I do think that maybe you could have made Thor a little bit bigger, just to make him look as though he's in the foreground and he's like sort of looking back at Xavier. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, great job all around on this. In terms of technical drawing ability, I think you could refine those line weights a little bit more. Maybe work on some of your shadows and your approach to rendering. But I think it's actually, if you compare it to the original, it's stacks up quite nicely, just with a few tweaks required. So great work on this. Wonderful effort. You've done a good job.
I just want to jump in and say a couple things. I agree. I actually really like the rendering and stuff. Couple of little choices that I love P3, how they're all turning and like, oh, they're getting the message. I think very cool. Couple points. Hate this shoulder, hate this ass. And
Hmm.
the original negative space here was a choice. You would have been better served to maybe recognize that choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice that before. Now I can't
So
unsee it, Ed.
please tell me what's happening there. Okay.
Cool.
I'm pretty to the point on this, right?
It's funny how we don't notice things always at first up, even other as the reader, we don't notice it, but
Yep.
we don't notice it in our own work, but then someone comes along with Ed's eye and points it out, and it's like, "Damn, it's ruined."
Constantly, man, constantly. And that's what we're here for. That's a lot of why we're sitting down
Totally.
here. This is a cool manga page, and I
Yeah,
gotta
very
say,
cool.
I prefer Gabu's version of this. Like on
Super
pretty
cool.
much every single level, I prefer it over the original, except for maybe the s- the straight on one. Like I
Mm,
like it. I think it's good, but I think I maybe would have been like, I kind of like the choice of everything leading off the page this way. You know what I mean? But like the structure of the faces, the of course this is not the greatest scan or whatever. I kind of do like the original lettering, on this one. I
mm.
wish this was a little bit bigger, but like the structure of the bodies, the faces. Um, Gabu, man, you really upped the game. You didn't change anything, but you upped the game. So if you're gonna tackle an artist and you think you can tackle that artist and you're not gonna change anything, you better bring it.
Yeah, do it
And you just
better.
brought it.
Don't do a worse version of it, do it better.
Do it better. And if you got the skill, and this shows it, he did it better, or she, whoever Gabu is, you slayed it. You did it better.
Yeah, well done.
Yep,
I love your rendering style. Very cool,
yep,
nice and intricate. That guy's back is just awesome in that top
yep,
panel. Yeah, nicely done. Is that it, Ed, for that
yep,
one?
yep,
Cool.
yep, yep, yep.
All right. What are we looking at here? We're looking at D. Chaves.
Chavez.
Chavez. There you go. Thanks for that, Ed. All right. Uh, I actually love this first panel, how you've changed it up. It's elongated, stretching from top to bottom, and you've got the guy on the ground looking right up at Superman. The thing is, even though I love this shot, and I would have, man, I would have stuck with this too, right? But if you're gonna do this shot, do it all the way. Make it accurate, make it correct because Superman here, he's sort of it almost looks like his whole body is angled down stiff and straight toward the character. Whereas what would have been more impactful is if you had him and we were looking up at him because the camera's down on the ground, right? So it should feel as though we're looking up at Superman rather than having him straight on toward us as if he's at eye level, direct eye level with us, and that just would have made it that much more impactful, I think. So that's the one thing I would have changed there. Otherwise, I love the rest of it. I think it's a really great shot. And then in this next panel, it's fairly standard what you've done here. I like that it's kind of dynamic. There's obviously maybe some anatomy issues that could be addressed and fixed. But the thing is even though it's a dynamic shot, it's kind of like a basic standard dynamic shot. And I don't mean any mockery when I say basic. I just mean it's so standard, so commonplace. And it would be interesting to me how you could add a little bit more uniqueness to that. Because if you look at the following panel on this one, panel two, you can see that there's just so much uniqueness going on, right? And then in the following panels that you've got here, I like the action shot. You've got Superman's head in the foreground. You got him in the background. Good amount of depth happening. As far as an action sequence goes, you're mixing up your shots nicely. You're tackling their poses in a dynamic, action packed manner with lots of movement. And I will say that as my eye travels throughout the page, it does seem to be going in the order that it's supposed to from one panel to the next, thanks to the way in which you've composed the illustrations in each panel. And you got some nice close up shots here at the bottom. I like that. I think that's good to see. And in the final panel, I feel like that could have hit with a better punchline. I feel like that maybe if it had a bit more room, because it's almost like we don't get a whole lot of rest once we get into the action sequence. It's like boom, 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 lots of little panels, lots of action happening, and it would have been just good to rest in the bottom section. So maybe if you cut one of these panels out and showed a nice, maybe one of the characters in the foreground, the other in the background just to give there some negative space, some room for the eye to rest, and for us to breathe at the end of that epic high octane sequence. That is my feedback on yours. Brilliant job. You've done awesome with this.
Just want to say one thing. If
Yeah.
you take Clayton's advice in P1, this page slays the original, in my opinion. I would
Mm,
much rather read your page than the original. The
there you
original
go.
seems so cluttered to me and so bothersome that
Yeah.
I would definitely buy D. Chavez's page over the original.
Nice.
Yep.
There you
And that's,
go. That's
yeah,
high
that says a
high
lot.
compliment there.
Yep.
Awesome stuff.
Okay, this name is gonna slay me. Slaw or Didalis? Let's go with that. Um,
Mm,
New Mutants, looking at the original to the new version, he youngified them, made them a little bit younger, made them a little bit more cartoonish, and love it. Love everything about it. There's so much that I'm enjoying of it. There's a little bit of a change of focus. Um, when we look at the eyes in the original one, I feel like they're talking to each other a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? There's a little bit more of an exchange, and I'm not
yeah.
always catching it. Ileana seems a little bit dreamier in this one, just slightly, but overall, like there's not a lot changing in how this was laid out. I love it. Like, if I was to change one thing, maybe if I could, maybe we've got white here in this on this final panel, and that white in the eyes might have just punched it a little bit more and given that fear. Here we've got only two colors. They went white and red, and this artist chose yellow and red. I think the white punched a little bit harder, but either way, I love this page. I've got very little feedback. I love the rendering style of it. I love the illustration style of it. Um, I would buy this. I'm starting to buy some of these because I would definitely buy this book. Definitely.
Nice. Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. What a great compliment. Yeah, I think it looks fantastic too.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to this next one here. So we got Spider Man by Luke Brown versing Venom, one of the coolest villains around. And this looks like a McFarlane page.
It
Oh,
does. It reminds me
mate.
of
Now,
McFarlane.
McFarlane had a lot of movement within his character poses. Um, so let's take a look at this here. I feel like with this first panel, so we got this perspective that goes all the way back, and they're in some kind of sewer system, right? So one little trick that you can do is have overlapping pieces of the sewer system. And I also feel like Venom, because he's this big character, well, he shouldn't be sitting lower in the frame than Spider Man, especially because of the fact that Spider Man is on the ground. So it would have been, if you're going to change this up, it would have been great to see a really gigantic representation of this looming venom that's coming for Spider-Man, which is, a bit more down here. He could still be in the foreground and he could still be bigger, but I want to feel some bigness coming off of Venom. He looks kind of like this small little dwarf in the back, right? Like really tiny. He's dwarfed in comparison to Spider-Man, so it takes his power away a little bit there. And then, as I was saying, with the background, you could have so this wall coming up here, and then the rest back. So there's a bit of a passage going through there. And then in this following panel, cool, pretty identical to the original page. In fact, this whole page is identical to the original. I just realized. Um, Wait, are they outside now? Did they? Oh, they burst out of the ground. I guess.
Not
Interesting.
in. Well, maybe. Yeah.
That's weird. Um, but otherwise, yeah. So I feel like you've sort of increase the size of Venom's head in all of your different representations of him. And when you increase the size of his head, what ended up happening is you sort of made him look more cartoonish, like bobble headed and younger. Whereas if you want to make him look big, then you shrink the size of that head down and you blow up the size of the rest of his body to make him seem really gigantic, which is what Venom sort of is. So you sort of almost like made him like yeah, kind of bobble-headed. He looks like a kid version
Yeah.
of himself. So that's just something that I would have fixed up. In terms of storytelling, not a whole lot I can say, but as far as technical drawing ability is concerned, lots of room for improvement there. I think you've done a great effort on the coloring and on everything else, the line art included. But just go out there, seek out different techniques and styles that you could use to enhance your own. And I think that you'll find that you improve the quality of your artwork a lot through doing that, doing studies just like this one. Hopefully, you learned a lot from doing it.
Pull up mine.
All right.
So just I think what's happening here is Luke was trying to push the foreshortening. You could see how small his knee
Yep.
is, that back leg and everything. And but that doesn't work in the distance of this shot. His knee is not that much smaller than his hand when they're both further back in this shot and stuff like that. It just doesn't work. When you want to have that foreshortening, that warping and stuff like that, you got to be kind of closer to the camera in many ways and stuff. As soon as you start moving away from the camera and stuff, everything's kind of starts coming into the same plane a lot, right? And so I think that's what Luke was trying to get at here. But as you pointed out, it just looks disproportionate. Then it doesn't carry, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this one's going to be Orlando. Oh, what did I do here? Orlando Baez, right?
Ah.
Jumping around. Okay, and this is very sketchy. Cool. I appreciate it. Is it better than or like first panel is grabbing something and pulling it off a mask, and he shows the mask is being pulled off. Does he show it effectively? Not bad. I'm confused by is this a gun in his way? And how is he ripping? Like, that's a giant gun that's leaning towards us. The angle of that pipe is coming towards us, right? We can see it in the top of the cylinder here. Yet the hand. So, okay, these are supposed to be weapons on the back of whatever thing this is, right? It's, I don't know, spawn maybe or something, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, is he pulling off his own mask? Gotta be.
Uh, yeah, I think he is. Yeah, he's
Okay,
supposed
he's
to be
pulling off
pulling
his
off
own
his own
mask.
mask,
Then
and
there's a whole lot of confusion. Like, I don't know, that it seems a little strange for this. It's this hand in front of the pipe that's really messing with me.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like we've got this pipe barrel, whatever it is, leaning forward on this shot, and then this hand is flat and coming. Like, do you
mm,
know what I mean? Like it seems like it just wouldn't be
yeah,
working in this shot, right? Then we've got
yeah,
the reveal of the face, really good. I think that works. And then we've got this extra proportional body that's like stretching, and it kind of reminds me of like Kirby-esque a little bit, like from way back in the days of how he's stretching that stand, stretching the foreshortening and stuff. It's fun, just fun. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and I like it in the bottom panel. It's kind of warping and kind of working and kind of goofy and all these kind of things, right? Um, yeah,
I'll say his head is way too close to the bottom of that panel, though. Panel number two.
yeah. The chin touching the bottom of the panel and stuff. We got a little crunched up over here, right? Like there's
Well, both
little
of them, yeah.
the head on top of head here is just a little bit. It actually confused me who was who for a bit. There was a little bit of confusion for me and stuff, right? Because of that alignment there, right? So, and it's just a sketch. Like Orlando, he's a great artist and stuff, and I could see he's
Mhm.
pushing it, but some of it is just a little confusing for
Yeah.
me and stuff.
So I'd always say this, like I think this is going to really help you out. Just think about how you frame your characters every single moment that you're showing within the sequence. Always think of it as having a frame, right? Like right now you sort of squeeze some of these guys into the panel. Panel 1 we see it, panel 2 we see it, and especially panel 3 where there's it doesn't feel like there's a frame. It just seems like they've been cropped, right? And so rather than cropping what it is you're showing, frame it with in different ways. You can use different assets. Like I think you could have pulled off the first shot in the way that you did it if you framed it differently.
Here's
So,
something, just a quick thing.
hmm,
Here's his chest. How the hell is that his, like, do you know what I mean? Like his head, his deltoid is up here, right? Okay, and that's the shoulder there. But then his head is so far down on this narrow chest. Yeah, it just there's it looks like this head got pushed down because of the framing and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Here we've got Matthias with He-Man, a He-Man
Mhm.
page that he's been working on. Let's take a look at it. Now, I take it his is the black and white one, which looks absolutely stunning, I have to say.
Yep.
Lots of detail incorporated into it, some good storytelling happening, some small tweaks to the when we look at the comparison between the two, you can see there's only been some small tweaks that have been made. Some panels have been kept the same, other panels have been changed. That's cool. Clearly, you were looking at the original page and thinking, hey, that works as well as it could possibly work. So I'm going to stick with that. I like the redesign on the snake over here. I think that looks much better than the original. And then you've actually got that snake charging at the sword in your new version and actually biting onto it, whereas we didn't see that in the previous one. Maybe a little bit harder to tell what's going on in this panel down here, just because the characters are much smaller. So, and there's also less depth in the new one you've done up. So here we can see the size of He-Man, whereas in the original version he was much bigger. So we lose out on some of that depth. What we always want to do to push the depth to the max is vary the size of the figures. So we've got He-Man in the foreground, and then we've got this guy all the way back there. So I would have had He-Man actually take up a lot more of this space. And yeah, the final panel looks pretty good, although I wish I could have seen more of the lizard guy. He's off over here somewhere. We can't really see him, and he's also backed up right against the lizard man in the panel previous to this last one, and so there's a little bit of a weird continuation where we see the form of this lizard man continues into the next frame. So I'm not sure that quite works, but otherwise, amazing job. I mean, you've definitely got some drawing skill and you've looked for ways to improve upon the original actively, which I think is a really good thing as well. Who have we got
Okay,
up next,
next up
Ed?
we've got Mike Nabel and some Venom action going on here, which is very cool looking. Uh the original looks like it's just stylized out of the 90s, which a lot of us can appreciate, right? So it's all good. And he brought some of that over. Looking at what he did, I'm going to switch colors here just so it punches a little bit more. Looking what he did, I like the angle of the panel. I appreciate that because it kind of brings us up, but also brings us pointing down, right? This character brings us into the next panel. This gun to the back of the head brings us over here. This angle brings us down to here. And this side eye brings us off the page. Good panel flow. I really appreciate when somebody really constructs their panel so it leads the viewer nice and easy. I'm not sure if I appreciate the whole signature off this side, but whatever. It's just a one shot, right? So one page, I think it works for that. Um, let's see, anything else that jumps at me? This, uh, looking at it, it's actually, the posing in this first panel is extremely similar. So there's not a lot of change up or anything. A little bit change of the fire. I do appreciate the white in the first one. So for coloring, think of white as in burning super hot, right? And play with that. See if it if it's the effect that you want and stuff like that. And that's as we go through, we can see how the original colorist used whites as to punch that heat a little bit more. And who was it? Mike didn't. He didn't delve into that as much. So that's something to think of, Mike. Use the whites. I love like he's basically retelling this as the assignment goes, but yeah, it's the exact panel layout. I'm looking at it now. He didn't really change it. He literally took everything and just drew it in his style. So this is not a compositional change or anything like that. This is just him drawing it the way he would. There's a couple little changes. There's a panel break over here, right? He's got a panel break coming into here.
Hmm.
Do I like it? Meh, it works. You know, it either way, we're already being led into P3. Um, it does squish P4 just a little bit. Takes me half a beat to figure out what's happening there. He could have given himself a little bit more room. Like there's a lot of room on this side of the panel that maybe could have been punched over and give us a little bit more to the back of the head, but not too bad. Gets explained in the next panel, so it's good. Um, I gotta say, like here in the original, the figure with the guns a little bit more imposing. The gun's a little bit more imposing. It's a little clearer, right? Uh, in his, not as clear. It's not as imposing. He looks a little bit smaller because of all this space around him. Is that bad? No, like honestly, proportionally, he's probably correct. But look at the cropping here, how they cropped Venom's arm, and how would that have sat if he kept that original crop? Actually, just doing that right now, that's a much tighter crop. I think that's the way I would have went. You know, just there was something about the original panel that really worked, and I think this extra space is not helping you, Mike. So overall, a really great redraw. I think you've got skills, man. Just with the colors, punch it even further with the whites, and just watch really how you're if you're making a change, is it for the better? Are you filling that space as best you could?
Yeah, and that original panel 4 works, and I think one of the reasons it works well is because if you divide lengthwise that panel up into thirds, the guy with the
Hmm.
gun is sitting right on one of those thirds.
Yep.
Whereas
Then the
in the
gun,
new
then Venom.
version, he's off to the center a little bit, and so compositionally, it doesn't hit
Hmm.
as hard.
Hmm.
So just something to keep in mind when you're composing the images inside your panels. Divide them
Totally.
up into thirds and plot out your characters based on those thirds.
Yep. Sounds good.
Alrighty, let's take a look at who we've got up next. We've got Eric Kilius. Okay, let's get him up over here. All right, Eric. Amazing work here, my friend. You've done a great job. So we've got the original and then we've got yours. And in your new version, we've got this nice, big, full body shot of Bane with a minigun. It's epic, it's eye catching, grabs your attention right off the bat. But then I think that what ends up happening is we get this cluster of 3 panels running down the right-hand side of the page, and because those panels are small, you've tried to fit the characters and some of the background elements into that small frame, and you've tried to capture them for the most part as a whole, and what it's done is it's really shrunk them down, so even though in that first panel, we get a nice big shot of Bane, super visually impactful, we lose some of that in those smaller panels, and so just because you're working with smaller panels doesn't mean you can't blow some of those characters up and really introduce some scale to increase not just the impact of the overall panel, but also create that additional level of depth. So if we look over here in the original, this is a great example. We've got this nice big representation of Bane, and in the background we've got this a little version of the other character. Okay, so
Hmm.
really scaled down, and that just creates so much distance between them and the steps within the scene. Same down in your last panel, right? So it's similar to what is going on the previous original page that you were working off of, except yours is really nicely, like almost perfectly framed and cropped. Now, there's a lot of different ways in which you can crop a scene that you want to represent within a frame. and it doesn't always have to be capturing the entire character or an entire portion of the character within it. You can cut it off. You can cut it off at the top of the head there, and you can really scale up the character and zoom in on them. And what I like to do to create a little bit of contrast is have some panels where you're looking at the character from a decent distance, and then in the next panel, boom, the camera zooms right in on them, and you get that nice rhythm of in and out when it comes to the zoom of the camera. So, a
Can you
few
say that
things to
again?
keep in
In
mind.
and out, Clayton? Is it a rhythm of in and out and in and out? Is that what it is?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah,
Okay, just so
exactly.
I
You
know.
want to
I'm
scale
learning.
it
I'm
up
learning.
and yeah, exactly. You got that nice dance of in and out happening, and it's just additional levels of contrast. Wherever you can introduce contrast in whatever fashion you can introduce it, it's going to be a good deal for your page. However, in terms of technical drawing ability, obviously you're quite advanced, so you've got that pretty much down. Practice makes perfect, though, so you can always get better. But really great job and effort on this. You've done awesomely. You should be proud of yourself.
Right on.
All right, Ed. Any additional input on that one?
Yeah, I just think like the concept here was great that could have had just could have laid it out different with Bane lined up and then the panels off to the side. Like Bane doesn't have to can still be ominous, can still be massive, can still be basically a full figure, but just the way that the panels are cutting into the legs and everything, it just
Yeah.
cuts and takes away how cool that solo picture of Bane is and stuff, right? Just either
Yeah.
move the panels so they're not cutting into them as much, or move Bane, rotate Bane with the gun in front of him or something like that, and then you'll have the easy alignment of panels to the side.
All right. Who have we got up next?
Cool. Next up is Nicholas Klein. And looking at it, this is almost exactly what I envisioned people doing for this contest. Taking something that's kind of dated and seeing if they could rework it and come with it. You know, taking one of the classics, taking one of the greats, and just seeing, what can I do with it, right? So this is a nice Spidey page. I like what Nicholas has done in this the first frame here. I think is quite good. It's framed really well. I think maybe we could have had the tentacles be a little bit more like coming off the screen. Do you know what I mean? Like coming in this way and filling it just a little bit more, right? Like filling up this space just a little bit more while still leaving room for the word bubbles or something like that, right? Like it just have them a little bit more powerful coming in and stuff, right? Nice hit from Spidey. I love the action there. Love the twist. Another twisting hit. Boom, boom. Doc Ock is flying, enjoying it. Spidey's jumping out of the way. Um, I'm curious how he would have laid out some of the bubbles here. Do you know what I mean? Like uh, some of the dialogue. Would it have been here? I wish. Yeah, I'm liking everything so far, so I kind of wish Nicholas would have taken that extra step and just shown me how he would have liked it. Because where's Spidey? Spidey's going to be up here, and if so, if these are two, which makes sense, this space isn't as useful, right? And so, Nicholas, for the next step for you, I really like what you've done here. This is you've entered before. I've seen a lot of your work. I really love what's going on here. Um, I think I would like to see you just even whether it's a rough in or whatever it is, see where you would have put the dialogue and see how you could have handled the spacing on it and stuff, right? Overall, great entry from you, man. Really, really proud of you.
All right. So next up, we've got Winter Pal. Now, obviously, you've got a very similar page that you've done up, based heavily on your reference, which is, it's almost the exact same layout and everything, which is totally fine. And what that means is that we'll focus on the technical execution of your drawing skills and maybe how they stack up against the previous reference page. So, you've done a great effort when it comes to implementing the shadows and the rendering. And I think that's maybe a bit of a focus of yours to really get that down, get that detail in there. And the first thing I would say to you in regards to that is just to make sure that you're looking at the length of your crosshatches. Remember that they don't always have to be the exact same length, and yours are pretty much. What you want to do when it comes to the length of your hatches is just make sure that you're basing that length on the form itself that they're wrapping around. So if it's a really big form, for example, then those hatches are going to be longer. Whereas if it's a thin form, then that's when you're going to want to make them smaller. Okay, so it really depends on the roundness and the largeness of the form that you're working over the top of. Or, in contrast to that, in comparison to that, it might depend on the smallness and also sometimes the rigidness of that form too. How shallow it is, how square it is, as opposed to being rounded. And of course, in this top panel, I mean, you pretty much nailed that axe. Looks quite good. It's a beautiful replica. And in this panel, in the original, it wasn't quite clear to me exactly what was going on. And it's still not clear to me what's going on in your new version. So, I mean, I would have looked at that and maybe seen or thought about ways in which I can try to improve it. Now, I'm assuming that there's a sword impacting an axe here, and that's what's going on. But again, it's not
No, I
immediately
actually
clear
think
to
the
me.
axe is cutting through an arm.
Oh, I see. I see.
I
Yeah,
think
this looks
that's
like
how I'm reading it, is
this is
the axe is slicing through a bicep,
right. Gotcha. There you go. Two different interpretations. You never want that to be happening within your panels.
maybe.
All right. And
Yeah.
in the final panel at the bottom here, again, pretty great job on the axe, I think. And of course, the face too. I mean, honestly, maybe there's a few little tweaks you could make there to the facial features just to get the proportions a little bit closer to what they should be. But otherwise, it's quite solid. And I'm sure that you learned a lot from working this closely off of a previously done comic book page by a professional artist. And I truly do hope that you did get a lot out of it. But great job. You've done awesome, and you should be happy with what you created here.
So if you can just switch over to mine for a quick second.
Yep.
All I'm gonna say is I think you're bang on that the rendering was a really good attempt, but if I look at the facial construction here, I think, Winter, you can do a little bit better here. There's a lot of symmetry problems happening and stuff, and I'm just gonna call you on it and just say, "Hey, lots of good things going on here, but this, I want you to push harder on this. I want you to have a nice symmetrical face, unless you're really going for it not to be, but that's not on model. That's not what's happening here, right? So just think about it, okay? Okay, that's
Cool.
it for that one. Next one is Juan Toro.
One Toro.
Juan Toro. And which one is the original here? This one. There we go. Okay, this is some pretty slick stuff going on here. The original, very cool. Uh, right? Like it's kind of got a bit of a comic book slash animated appeal to it and stuff, right?
Yeah.
The his version, I'm looking at it, and there's a lot of things that I really like about it. I like the changing of the angles. I think that really works, right? That we're behind. Uh, sorry, I'm not a DC dude. This is Batgirl and Catwoman. I'm presuming. I'm
Yeah.
asking the wrong dude
It,
too.
it, it
Yeah,
it looks like it. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't know where a lot of these pages are from. I can guess some of them, but
yeah. Okay, so we'll go with bats and cats. Um, I like that you framed it this way. I think that's a very good framing, but I think the foreshortening just is getting to the cartoonish level a little bit. I don't think that if you took a reference photo that was framed like this, we would not see the hand and everything. It just, I don't know. I think it's pushing it a little bit far. I get why you did it. It's cute, but I just think meh. P2, I like what you're doing here, but it takes away from the impact of the full body stance. There's a power dynamic here of sizing and everything that's happening here. and we only have part of it. We're not seeing what all is going on there, right? So just realize why that was there in the first place, and if you're choosing to take it out, in this case, I think it was a mistake, but like your drawing's good, really good. It's just a matter of choosing certain things, right? Looking at this, the original has four, and you have one, two, three, four, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. So you really are giving yourself a lot of room for storytelling, right? So we go to P3. Um, we've got this kind of reaction, but we've also got this hand that looks like it's wanting to grab a boob or something like that. And I'm a little confused by that. I like the face reactions. I like the turning, but it almost feels like something's behind her, and she's looking back and saying, "What is that?" You know. The dialogue might clear this up a little bit, but yeah, the hand over the boobs and the quick reaction is kind of making me like, did somebody come from behind? P4 doesn't seem like it. It's just like, no, I'm walking away. And so, could you have done something different with the hand if it's a dismissive hand, right? Like, no, you know, whatever that is, right? Whereas in this hand is almost grippy on those boobs, right? Next one's walking away. It's a fine shot. It works. But then we almost repeat. We almost repeat this. P4 and 5 could have been one shot. Her leaping up onto the ledge. Good enough. Like to get away, right? And so this could have been made into one shot because we've got too much repetition here. Then her leaping away and her smirking. This is a good shot. I think your final panel is a nice rendition of your version of their final panel, and I like that you added the swinging away part. I think it's all good. I would have cut this one, and I would have made room for the power dynamic in this one. Cool.
Mm. Yeah, yes, and the other thing I'll add to that as well is, as Ed said, there's a few panels that you could cut out here, and I think that if you look at what's happening on a page overall, in this instance, it looks like Catwoman and Batgirl have ran into each other, and Catwoman's retreating, and she's left the diamond behind, which Batwoman or Batgirl notices at the end. Okay, so if you take that event that's unfolding on this page, I think that your skill as a comic book interior artist is defined by not how is defined by not how many panels you can use to tell this what's happening, but how few you can use. Right? How can you be as optimized as possible when it comes to the panel layouts and the amount of panels that are on the page that you need to tell the story?
Yep.
Something to keep in mind there, because you've added in maybe one or two additional panels that probably didn't need to be there.
Yeah, totally. And when I'm looking at the story, what it is Batgirl grabs that diamond and tosses it over the side, and Catwoman's kind of like, "Why did you do
All
that?"
right,
And
yeah.
you're beepity beep, and she jumps away. Batgirl looks down and says, "Ha ha ha! I didn't really toss it. It's sitting in the fire escape."
Yeah.
Now, how
There you
quickly
go.
can you tell that? Exactly. How many panels would it take? Meh. It doesn't take 7, right? So I think the additional panels didn't clarify the story anymore. It didn't add to the story.
Yeah. It just maybe drew out the pacing, that those additional panels are
Yep.
going to make it feel longer when
Yep.
it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yep.
Okay, next up we've got Salvador. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So, yeah, Salvador, you've done a great job. Pretty much mimicked the reference that you were working off of. So it could be classed as a study. And with every study, you can learn a lot from observation. But let's take a look at what you've done here. So on your second panel, very difficult to tell what's going on. In fact, as with the original, I'm not even sure what's going on here either. And so, whenever you come across a page that you're working off of where it's not immediately obvious what's going on, especially for a competition that's designed like this, I would say improve upon it and see, have a think about, get creative with it. How could have I improved upon this particular panel? What could have I done to make it clearer, to make it more impactful, to make it read better? Because, yeah, this panel is, if I've got to stop and think about what is unfolding, then my suspense of disbelief is broken. Okay, so that's not a good thing. And so what we have to do is just make sure that we're thinking about that stuff as comic book artists. And next up, we've got the third panel. You've done a pretty good job of, getting down what needed to be included within this panel. Few technical drawing aspects that could be improved upon, such as the representation and stylization of the facial features and maybe some of the head proportions and that kind of thing. That's going to come with time as you hone your skill set and develop it, find yourself as an artist. But just in terms of just downright fundamentals here, I would have increased the size of this guy's hand because it's far too small the way in which you've drawn it there. So that's just the first immediate thing that I'm noticing. Yep, this panel's pretty standard. Again, I would have thought about ways in which you can add your own stylization to the eye. How can you get your particular way of representing something such as this through on the page? And yep, I actually like your panel a little bit better than in the previous version here. We'll get to see a little bit more of the guy. And same with this last panel. I like that you have included the hand here. That's good to see. But again, just some proportional issues maybe that could be addressed just to make sure everything checks out there. Um, and yeah, again, I'm not quite sure exactly what this portion of the panel is supposed to be showing. So there is a lack of clarity with some of the elements that you've included within the interiors of these panels. It's not necessarily your fault because you're working directly off of the previous page, but in terms of what you could have done better, there's certainly a lot there that you as a comic book artist could improve upon. So, yeah, but otherwise, awesome effort. I know that this would have taken you some time to do. So, I mean, you got to give yourself a pat on the back for giving it a shot. All right, Ed,
Yep, I
I'll turn it
agree.
over to
I
you.
enjoyed it, and I like the stylization, and I agree with everything Clayton said. It just needs more clarity and just hone in on whatever style you're rolling with, right? Okay, next up is Eric Lagamayo, and he's
Oh,
tackling Batman and Killer Croc. Now, I don't know
hmm
if something's going on here on my file or not, but I'm
hmm
presuming that's a normal Batman. I don't know if there was a legacy carryover or what that's from, but whichever, I'll ignore it. We're presuming
yeah,
Batman looks like normal Batman in this, right?
yeah,
We've got the batarang or whatever it is wrapping around the Croc's mouth. Looks good. Comparing it to the first one, though, not quite as raw. Like it's just it looks like a lizard and it's opening its mouth, but where's the intensity that's the first one, right? Because basically it's the same layout. So I'm going to compare small things here, right? Skill and any minor changes. And so the first one is missing the P1 is missing the intensity from their P1 and also the hand. The hand looks like it's coming from off panel onto the panel, right? Like kind of a top down of a hand, or maybe not. I don't know. Whereas in the first one, it looks like he's kind of got it in front of his face and he's gripping it or something like that, or just off to the side of his face and he's gripping it, right? Like something, something like this. That works, right? So yeah, a little bit of P1 is kind of losing out on intensity. P2 though, damn, I'm kind of liking it. I really enjoy bats in this. I like the pole. I like the cape. I like the croc getting bent backwards. I would like to see a little bit more of a bending of the line of action here, and that was in the original. So bend your characters just a little bit more. Give some more line of action there. Okay. You chose not to have the gratuitous buttocks shot, and that's your call. I'm cool with that. But I maybe would have liked to see a little bit more of this character. it's kind of a funky cropping right now that I'm just like, is this character laying down? Here, the character's jumping, and we could clearly see that, or moving out of the way or something. Here, the character just makes ground. It's too grounded and stuff like that. So not in love with that. I would have maybe reworked this, and I don't mean that just to throw in a butt shot. I mean it needs to be reworked a little bit, right? I like this one. He's unclinking something from a harness or whatever. It still works. Good rendering on the abs, and then shooting this off. Um, I think you're going for a little bit of foreshortening here, right? So I'll give you that grace. Just the head looks a little bit large in this. And, when we get an enlarged head, like I've got, it makes me look a little less heroic, right? So you want kind of slightly smaller head or whatever, and big bulbous muscles, right? And I think you've got the muscles going on. I just think if you would have taken this head down 5% or something like that, it just would have carried forth that a little bit stronger impact, right? Like, and then we can look at the original reference. So yeah, great page. Just bend your line of action a little bit more, and maybe we work the figure in the front on this one. Those would be the big changes for me.
For sure. Yeah, awesome stuff. Okay, next up we've got. All right, let's take a look. Nautile. Nautiel. Sorry if I'm
Not you, not
mispronouncing.
you.
Yeah.
Blue, Miss Blue, Mr. Blue, the Blue.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but you've done some amazing artwork here, and I love that you've got, you know, you've got a similar style going on as the original, but you've also given it your own take too. Like I'm
Mhm,
seeing a little bit of your own uniqueness coming through within the rendition of the page, the re-rendition of the page that you've based your work off of. And I think you've done a great
mhm,
job on it. I mean, you pretty much replicated what was in the original, which is totally fine. I mean, that you could have certainly interpreted the competition in that way. And I like the painterly approach that you've taken, while still also incorporating those nice contrasting blacks that you'd see within more of an inked style. But I think your
mhm,
coloring is maybe more painted by the looks of it. So you got this really Mike Mignola theme happening within the first original one, and then you've added some more painterly effects to yours. And I think it creates a nice artistic aesthetic to it, which is good to see. In terms of technical execution, so what I'm seeing is that you've customized, you've changed up the panel layouts a bit, and I really like your version maybe a bit better, to be honest with you. I just think that the real estate of the page is used more wisely. It feels like one of these panels could have been cut out almost completely, but I get what's happening is that she's being absorbed by this blood. I guess you could, guess it's supposed to be, and then re-emerging from it as someone else, or some, assuming that's the same person. Um, but yeah, really, honestly, I like your new panel layout that you've added to the page, and then in terms of your style, I mean, it's a fairly solid style. I think there's different things that you're going to do going into the future, no doubt, that help to refine it, where you'll hone it, and it'll become more and more polished as time goes on. But I think you've done a really great job here. And maybe the only thing that I would have suggested to you is thinking about ways in which you could have changed up some of the interior art of the panels to make the story read better. For example, maybe this shot down, this second panel down here didn't have to be almost the exact same as the previous panel. Maybe these angles could have been changed up in terms of the camera shots that were picked for them. But otherwise, yeah, really awesome work. You've done a magnificent job here.
I'll just add that I think that it's 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 rough, and I can appreciate kind of the rough look of it. But I think for me, I would have tried to clean it up just a little bit much. Like even there's some
Yeah.
errors here where, we've I don't know if my page is up. Yeah. Where you could see the red spilling into these blue lines and stuff like that. There's just as we look deeper, it's very rough. And like I said, I can appreciate it. I just would have maybe taken a few moments to just tighten it up just a little bit. That's
Yeah.
kind of a stylistic choice, though, right?
One other thing I'll
Okay,
add
next.
is just
Oh,
the
go
the,
ahead.
the way in which the speech bubbles were laid out. Okay, so that text needs to be either
Yeah.
shrunk or the balloon needs to be increased in size to create a bit of a margin between the text and the speech bubble because it's
Yep.
way too close to the frame of the bubble there.
Yep.
All right, go ahead, Ed.
Next up is Valerion. Valerion. Um, interesting style. Basically, no form outlines, just rolling with the ink shades, right? And yeah, like you could see, like if I zoom in, there's no form outlines. There's the only
Mm,
thing that's giving it form and shape is the shades, right?
very Sin City.
Um, looks cool. Like it's very cool. I'd hate to color it if it was me. Do you know what I mean? Like don't ask me to color this thing, but like just as it stands right now, I think it's very cool. Cool style, keep it black and white. I would roll with that. But it can get a little confusing sometimes. Do you know what I mean? With when we don't have any outlines showing some of the forms. So like sometimes it's kind of clear, but as we start to roll through it just a little bit, I get confused by what's happening in some parts, like something's hitting here maybe, or is that like I just don't know what this mass is. It's extremely difficult for me to see what this, here, let's see, should be drawing on this. What this is. I have no clue. And maybe I can see the hands being blocked and something's coming in and it's not so clear. And yeah, like again, I like the style, but be careful that you got to be clear of what's happening because now, like here is unclear, and then also kind of, can anybody tell me what's happening there? It's something happening over a bunch of grass. Like this is hands gripping something, right? But I don't know what this final panel is. Clayton, any guess?
No, I don't know, but those two panels
Oh,
probably don't need to be there.
oh, it's maybe a boot digging into the grass. Because here's some laces and here's some laces, maybe the laces of the top of a boot, maybe. And so he's digging back into the grass as he pushes for. Again, that's my guess, right? And again, like I said, I like this style. I would hate it as a colorist. It's fun, but you really have to make sure that you're being clear. If we can't figure out what the heck is going on here, most other people won't either.
Hmm.
Okay, you got
Yeah,
the next one,
I mean,
Clayton.
yep, I've got it up here. I like the style of this. Really awesome stuff.
Yep.
Okay, next up we've got Bora. All
Hmm.
right. Yeah, beautiful work here. And it's good to see that you've really tried to get inventive, a little bit creative with your interpretation of the page that you've chosen to go with. And let's just see whether or not it works and whether or not it's an improvement on the previous page. So, here, what we want to look at first is maybe the flow. So, if we're looking at her arm, yes, it can. We could say it flows into the next panel, but then this character here, your eye line would drop straight down. So there's no real flow that's taking us back to this panel. And so what you want to try to do with the images inside your panels is suggest a pathway for the reader's eye to follow. Now, this could be done through the shape and the organization of the panels themselves, a lot of the time it's done through the artwork within them and the general flow in which it follows. Something to think about, and which is absent from your current interior work.
Hmm.
In terms of drawing execution, you've got some drawing skills there. As time goes on and you practice and you learn new things, that's inevitably going to get better. For now, you're starting off from a very good, solid foundation, I think. The one thing I would tell you, though, is to, as you move forward, one of the best things that you're going to be able to do to become a more impactful comic book artist is to make your shots more dynamic. Okay, if we look at this first panel here in comparison to the original page, this one's much more dynamic. We've got the camera set up over here, right, looking at the scene at an angle, whereas in your version, it's just straight. We're looking at this lady from the side. We're looking at this one from the direct back. It's kind of flat and it's kind of boring, unfortunately. When you choose a shot like this, it's just the nature of the shot. It's very difficult to make it look impactful. And then same with the next panel, straight shot from behind for the most part. Now you got this one in the foreground, gives it a little bit of depth, a little bit of dynamicness, but then we jump back down here to the third one, straight shot from the front, straight shot from the side here. And then in this last panel, you've really mixed things up. Okay. This is what we would have wanted to see in the previous panels, where you've got the camera set above the characters now. It's a more dynamic shot, and there's that additional level of visual interest happening. So those are the key things that I think if you focus on going forward, the flow of the panels and how the page reads overall, and are making your shots more dynamic, you're going to find that your skills as a comic book artist really level up. So well done, though. I think this is an amazing effort that you put in, and yeah, I can't wait to see how you take what I've told you here and apply it to the next page that you enter into the next competition. Well done.
Hmm. Good points, man. All right, next one is Eric Franklin. Um, yeah, this is tough because you're trying to capture, a superstar, diva, rock star, and then in a concert setting plus fighting ninjas. There's a lot going on here, right? Like it's not an easy thing to capture. It's the first scene has a very Tina Turner vibe, which I dig, but some of the anatomy and flow of things, like where is this foot? What plate? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it back there? Why is the heel lower? Like, it just seems bubbly and wonky and like pushed. And then as I move up the leg and everything seems kind of disjointed, and then the face doesn't help very much. So really, I think I would have went and tackled, because this is the kind of money shot that grabs your attention when you first look at this page, and it's not as strong as it should be. This girl needs to look absolutely stellar, grab the attention, all of that, right? When we look at how they did it at first, a lot of it was on the audience and crowd, and the star wasn't the biggest feature of it and stuff. Like, it was there, but it was conveyed through coloring and stuff, right? You chose to have
Yeah.
her front and center, and everything else just off to the back. You got to really bring your A game on that figure work, right? The second face is much better. I like the ninjas coming up, right? I think I could have maybe had some worry going on, a little bit more worry in the face of like, damn, I'm performing and there's motherfucking ninjas crawling up on my stage. Do you know what I mean? To have that expression in her face somehow, like, oh, something up in there, right? Um, yeah. So right now it's just this mildly concerned look, and I think it could have been a little bit more like, hmm. Or if we look at the original one, it's a smirk. And it's like, yeah, you stepped onto the wrong stage, right? So right now, this expression is, it needs to be pushed. It needs to be pushed, pulled, in some way to give more dramatic effect. Whether it's the slyness, whether it's the shock, whatever it is, needs to be pushed more. I like the ninjas in P3. I like the swoosh in P4. I like the kick in P5. The last panels I think are working pretty well. I think the background is it's okay. I don't know. I like the solid colors of the original a little bit more, but I get it. You're vibing with a bunch of lights and you're kind of jumping on that superstar lighting and stuff. So carries well. I'm cool with it. But the first two panels, yeah, I think they could have been punched up a heck of a lot more. Cool.
For sure. Yeah.
Yep.
But otherwise, great work.
Yep.
All right. See who we've got here now. This page, I love. I'm a big Spawn fan, so I know this comic book character well. So Dominic Daly. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing your name right there.
Daily
If I'm not, I apologize.
delay.
But
Dally.
man, great page to pick. I mean, the original looks amazing, very inspiring to look at, and I'm sure you were
Hmm.
feeling some of those vibes as you were recreating it. And you've added this really cool transformation sequence to the page.
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
it would have been so cool if these panels here could have been as big lengthwise as the original, but because they're so small and there's so much detail there, and so you create a lot of visual busyness when you shrink them down and try to cram all of that in. But for what it is, it's really really cool to look at. So maybe what you could have done here is just take these panels and lengthen them all the way down behind
Hmm.
the violator in this bottom panel, and then you've still got spawn here too. And I would have lengthened that one as well, and just have this guy around the bottom, sort of entering into those panels or overlapping them would probably be a better way of putting it. So yeah, great transformation sequence. Now there's a little bit more happening with Spawn in this third panel. There's a little bit more character to his pose. He's sort of tilted off center somewhat, and there's some asymmetry going on. Whereas in your new representation of this frame, what you've got is Spawn shot straight from the front, which it works really well with the clown in this first panel because of the context of it. There's supposed to be some intensity there, so we want him straight in the front of the camera, staring right into it. But here with this one, where we're looking at Spawn, especially because the clown is shot from the front too, you got this weird like symmetry happening between that first frame and that fourth frame, and all the other ones as well are shot straight from the front. So I think when you get to that Spawn shot, you really want to mix that up and maybe either shoot it from below a little bit lower, but also on an angle as well, and try to shoot it in such a way where you've got Spawn and the artwork you've drawn for him actually funneling the eye path that the reader follows down into the bottom panel. But in that bottom panel, obviously you've incorporated a ton of detail, which we love to see in a Spawn page, and you've done a really magnificent job of that. I know it must have taken you forever. Great job. And well done overall. It's a hard page to pull off, very intimidating, but you've done quite well. So well done. All right, Ed, over to you, my friend.
Okay, so next up for me is Woljek Lek, I think is his name.
Hmm.
Probably butchering it. Sorry about that. Um, Funny because the original piece also is that shade without a line form to it, and it kind of works as in the stark black, white space, that kind of thing, right? He decided to go all out and do a flat color on it and stuff, and I find his way more readable. Um, I think overall, I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, it's more readable. I'm enjoying it as a comic book reader. I can follow a little bit better. I think that perspective issues happening with this body, like His bum looks a little dumpy and stuff like that. And so I would have kind of reworked this figure just a little bit, or at least just how the coat's sitting on the figure. Also, the dialogue bubbles I think are not really making me totally excited in this page or anything like that. And that's where I think the lettering in the first reference page kind of does really well. It just it's clear, grabs my attention. The second one is a little meh. Overall, though, love the style. Just work a little bit on the figures in perspective, just a little bit. Even when I'm looking at the size, like because this is a camera down, like it's lower and it's looking up at him, but his head is huge compared to the hands. Like so. Figures in perspective are my advice for you. Uh, yeah. Other than that, I like the readability of your framing and stuff like that. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Hmm.
Next up, you got
Heck yeah.
Cal.
Cal, we've got next.
Hmm.
All right, well done on this, Cal. Excellent job. And it looks like you've got pretty much. Oh no, you've changed things up in your new version. You've got your own style going on, so that's good to see. So let's ask ourselves whether or not your new version has improved upon the previous version. So yeah, you've added in this additional panel. Um, okay, actually, you've mixed the panels up a bit. So whatever's going on here, all these pipes falling down onto the character in this bottom row, you've taken that up here, and then you sort of left this bottom panel just as he's seeing these pipes fall upon him. Now I would have maybe messed with the camera angle and showed him looking up at the pipes as they're coming down to fall on him and actually having some of them fall on him. I think that would have been a much more powerful end shot because, you know, is he looking at the ground here? Is he looking up at the pipes? Where is he looking? It's very hard for us to tell. Now you've got some shadows here falling on his face, which would suggest he's looking up at the pipes. So that's good, but not everyone's going to pick up on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Now the other thing I'm a little bit confused by is this a really little man? Is that a little tiny character? Or is he looking at somebody from a distance there? So that's it must be a
No, I
very
think
small man. Yeah.
I think the one is a giant, and Steve
Yeah.
Rogers is
Oh,
fighting the giant.
okay. Gotcha. Right. I
Yeah,
see what you're
yeah.
saying. Yep. No, that's exactly right. Cool. I can't believe it took me so long to pick up on that.
It's okay.
Okay, yeah, and
Our minds get yeah.
yeah, my mind was looking at technical drawing ability and whatnot, and whether or not and how this was playing out. But okay, and as far as technical drawing ability is concerned, it's clear you've got your own style that you've been honing, and you're going to continue to develop that inevitably. I think you've done a pretty great job of accurately capturing this first panel. Um, maybe I would have had to just to increase the impact of it. Maybe you could have foreshortened this leg a little bit. Have it coming out toward the camera rather than straight across. I think that would have made it a little bit more impactful because, it kind of looks like he's doing the splits. It's on a 2D plane, kind of makes it look a bit flat. Same here. We're looking at the giant directly from the side. Maybe shoot the shot from below, looking up at the giant, falling down or whatever it is he's supposed to be doing here. And I think that would have made it much more cinematic and interesting to look at. So always look out for those two-dimensional kind of flat shots. You want to try to avoid those where possible, unless it's a very intentional thing that's going to improve the quality and the final presentation of the panel that you're working on in particular. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, look, you've done a great job here. I can see that you've really put some time into the line art and the coloring, which seems to be done in Copics or watercolors. So, yeah, you put a tremendous amount of work into this. Well done.
Okay, next up we've got Judd's entry here, and he's tackling a '90s Liefeld page,
All
and does a
right.
very, very good job of it. I've been looking at it here and looking at P1, 2, 3, and even 4. And not much
Mhm.
is bothering me. Like, I'm liking a lot of it. I like the entry of Siren in P1. I think that looks really good. Um,
Mhm.
I'm kind of looking back and forth and saying, okay, what were the choices here? You know, what's going on and stuff, right? Different vantage point in P1, and I appreciate it. I think it works better for me visually, um, and anatomically compared to the original, right? P2 though, there's a brooding nature, and this is Cable, I'm presuming, a rendition of Cable or something. Do we know who this is? I'm gonna go with
Yeah,
Cable because of the eye and all that. And
it's similar, but I don't think it is him, but very similar
okay,
design.
let's call it
I think this is
Cable,
from
whatever,
Brigade, maybe?
maybe.
Mm.
Um, well, there's Shatterstar, Siren, Cannonball, and Thunderbird, or maybe a different version of him or something like that. Anyways, the thing that Liefeld does really well here is the broodingness, right? The weight of the brow and the heaviness of the stare and all that. And we might not always appreciate that, but we could see how much kinder and softer. And yes, it's a stylistic choice of rendering and line work and all that kind of stuff. But even just the face, like P2, that's a dude I don't want to fuck with, generally speaking. Do you know what I mean? That
Mhm.
it looks like a tough guy, an angry guy, somebody who just looks mean, right? Uh in if the new version, much softer, almost like the Cartoon Network version. And the thing is, like I said, I'm not trying to do just we're comparing styles, but we're also comparing like rendering, we're comparing everything here and stuff. And it's just like my style is more akin to um Judd's approach to things. I like the line work here. I like this
Mhm.
approach, but I want to recognize the mood of the first ones that maybe doesn't carry over. Look at the dominating nature of this figure over Siren, right? Whereas in P3, it's not as dominating in the new one, right? Like he could have been a little bit bigger if we would have panned the camera angle just a little bit more or something to show how imposing he is over her or something like that. So what I wonder is in the original script was a note there saying Cable's got to be imposing. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe. And so that's something we got to recognize is what was the mood, not just the panel, not just the story, but what did we take away as we get to different levels of being an artist? And listen, Judd's a high level artist here, so that's why I'm nudging him in this direction. Is what was the mood? P4 though, you know this badass stance mood, right? And Judd does it very, 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 very well. In fact, yeah, I love it. I would love to color it. I'd love to work with this page, with this artist. It's great, great stuff. I love it. I'm just my one nudge towards you, man, is that watch the intent of mood sometimes and see if you agree with it and be conscious of those choices. Okay.
Mhm. Amazing style, very high quality level artwork, and, I think that might be Cable, actually. It's
Okay.
hard for me to tell
I'm gonna guess it's
sometimes.
Cable. That's my guess.
Cool. Alright, here we go. So next up, we have Jason. Jason, really well done on this. Let's take a look. Now, you've got much more of a stylized approach to your artwork, especially in comparison to the classical, like anime manga look of the page that you were working off of. So this is cool to see your translation of it and how you've decided to go about representing it. Now, what I will say is that it is a little bit more difficult to understand what is going on your page. So, um, right, I see. So it looks like what we've got going on here is, and I'm just going to get my paint bucket here. So you've got basically two panels here, as opposed to the three that were on the original page, which we have to ask ourselves whether or not that still works as a sequence. And
No, I'm gonna jump in here, and
oh
he's
wait,
got 1, 2, 3, 4 panels going on. It's just really hard to read.
oh. Right.
That
So this
little
would be a
finger
panel.
panel, that's a panel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I
it's hard
see.
to read. I've
Yeah,
I've been looking at it trying to
I
figure it
get
out.
you. Cool.
Yep.
All right. So it looks like you've taken this bottom panel as well, and you put that in the first panel. Right. Okay. Cool. Actually, probably that does work a little bit better because he's seeing the. You're almost wondering, what's he just seen? And then we get down here to, I think this is Naruto, right? And we see the main guy that he's looking at. Um, yeah, it's difficult to know what's going on. Whose hands are these? I have no idea. And why are they being
Mhm.
put up like that? Not sure. It seems like in the original page, what's happening is that they're having some kind of exchange, an argument between two old friends, and this guy's shocked at what he's just said. So, whereas in your interpretation of the page, it looks like this guy's freaked out by this guy. This guy's really angry and he's about to attack. So this seems like less of an exchange of words and more of a battle that's about to unfold. And maybe that's what's happening here. It's just going a little bit slower in terms of pacing. But yeah, I mean, amazing artwork in terms of technical drawing execution. You got a very solid style going on. Just have to ask
Mhm.
ourselves whether or not the actual sequence makes sense, whether or not it's getting across the message that we want to convey here. Awesome work, though. Well done.
Good stuff. Next up, we've got Chris Helgelson, and he's tackling a pretty tough page. Um, yeah, that's a tough page to go after.
Mm.
Did he? Hmm. I'm trying to figure out how I want to approach this because when I look at it, there's a lot of similarities here, right? And unfortunately, many of them aren't, the changes aren't necessarily for the better. When I look at P1 to P1, same shot fundamentally, right? And in the original P1, it's framed a little bit better. It's more vertical. In his, it's stretched horizontally. Batman's kind of lower, stooping over. It's not as, yeah. It's just the lighting's a little not as imposing on it. If we look at P1 in the original, lighting's from above, gives a nice dramatic flare. In the new one, the lighting's from the side. It's not really doing as much for it, right? Um, P2, it's a change to have bats talking with this character. Um, and we take away from the nice close up of fear, right? So, and then we also add in a lot of black space. Why is that? What's happening? If you're going to make changes, and like I said, part of this contest is making changes and understanding why we're making changes, right? A lot of these changes are not adding to it at all. I mean, like I'm just like when I'm looking at the difference, I can see I like the inks and like there's some good things going on here, like the rim light going on Batman's face here and stuff. I like that, but I really don't think it's really making the changes in choices here are not making it better. Also, when we look at proportional things, Batman, the size of his head. Uh, do I really want to do this? So that's one, two, three, four, five, six heads high, maybe five and a bit or something like that. If I was to really measure it out, is not a heroic character, right? So, it looks almost like a child, and I don't want to sound mean in this, but like, you've got a lot going on, really good understanding of lighting. I like the hatches going on, but just a basic proportional thing of heroic proportions is missing. Oh, but I like what you did here. This is cool. I really like that panel. I like this panel. I like these last panels. So to me, the saving grace are the last four panels here. But the first four, boy, I'm really taken out of the game here. Like it's not. I don't know. I just think proportion wise, making the choices, it's you're not really bringing your A game here, Chris. The last four panels though, you really really did. So good stuff, man.
Nice inking
Next
and
up, Clayton.
contrast too.
Can you do Ryan next? I think.
Yep, I'm doing Ryan next. Let's do it. All right, Ryan. Great work on this Power Rangers page by the looks of it. And
Hmm.
you've got a solid style going on. Really nice looking line art,
Hmm.
which is good to see. And and I speak about the lineup because it's so neat and tidy and very
Hmm.
very steady. You've got a very steady hand there, so you need that when you're doing polished, professional looking, slick, sharp line work like that. And as far as the layout of the page, you pretty much mimic the reference that you were working off of. And so we have to ask ourselves, well, okay, in terms of style then, and in terms of the way in which you've technically executed the drawing, is that well done? Well, as I said, the line art is on point. Now you've got a bit of a different way in which you approach the style of your character faces.
Hmm.
And I think that's very much your own. And honestly, I'd expect to see this in an actual comic book. I think this is definitely publish worthy. You've done a great job on the hands here. Maybe there's a few areas in which you could go ahead and maybe just make double check the anatomy of the hand to make sure that that checks out correctly. Hands are very difficult to do, but you've done or you awesome effort on this last panel. Great job. Um, Now, yeah, and the faces. Look, I think that maybe as time goes on, you will develop a bit more of a recognizable style that's unique to you. You know, this artist definitely has a style that they've been working on for a long time, that they've honed over extended period. The same is going to happen to you. Now, you've already got the makings of a good style going on. I just think that there's definitely room for development there. So look at other artists, your other influences, and take from them what you think will add to your own style, integrate it, and practice it until it becomes, part of the way in which you draw. But yes, excellent work on this. A lot of work has gone into it. You can see that from all the characters you had to draw, and of course, all the hands you had to draw on this bottom panel. I'm glad that it was you and not me having to draw those. But yeah, really well done. You should be proud of what you've achieved here.
Okay. Next up is John Frost. Looking
Hmm.
at it, I love his P1. I love the silhouette coming in the door. That is spot on. Like you really, really rocked it. I don't know if I love Joker's face as much, but overall, like just the silhouette walking in the door, killer. When we get into P2 and then it kind of goes to P3, this is where it gets a little confusing. Do you know what I mean? P2 drags out into P3 and it's confusing because like he's trying to play with shadows and is that character now behind the Joker, standing behind him as a silhouette, or is it a cast shadow? Because we have cast shadows leading up to that, and if it's a cast shadow, why are there so many highlights on Joker? Do you know what I mean? Like the readability of it gets confusing. What was starting off really strong in P1 loses me P2, P3, P4 is fine. Uh, P5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, P5. Panel 5 is okay, but like you could have really went with some more dramatic effect. Like I love the camera angle pan, like bringing it up there and looking down and seeing the Joker, but there's a lot going on in perspective with these figures, with the crowbar, with the hand. Like if we're looking at like something smashing down on somebody and somebody reaching up and like no, there's just it could have been pushed so much, whereas in right now it is so plain, static, and actually wrong in the perspective of what's going on here and stuff like that. Like it looks like little dolls, like a little doll is sitting there getting posed, and then another like it just honestly, P1 is strong, and the concept, the angle concept behind the last panel is really strong. but I think the execution of it just needed a little bit more work. Clayton, next up.
All right, let's do it. Next up, we have Alfred. Alfred John Lawson. Beautiful work on this page, drawing some Superman. Always a fun character to draw. And you know what? I think that you've done an amazing job on this. I may in fact prefer yours over the original. I'm assuming, yeah, this is the original that you are working off of. So I think that it's a huge improvement. Going just off the first panel, we see here that you've picked a much more dynamic, cinematic, visually impactful shot. Hard to pull off, but you've executed it so well. I love the style that you've gone with. I like the amount of detail that you've incorporated into it, and the fact that we've got so much depth happening in the scene. She's in the foreground, he's in the background. You've got the camera positioned in a way where we're looking up at him, so he looks all the more powerful. And then, if I look at the original here, I mean, Superman's face looks really whack. I've got to say, there's some weirdness going on there. It almost looks scary. Whereas yours, I mean, this looks fantastic. It is a shot where we're looking. It's a less dynamic shot, arguably, where we're looking at him straight from the front. But in this particular context, I think it works really well, especially because you still manage to implement some depth with these characters in the background, which are placed a little bit further back behind him. And then in the next panel, again, I think that you've done a better job than the original. We've got a nice big shot of Superman coming in, foreshortened, and then he's flying toward the villain who seems to have this lady. It might be Superwoman. I'm not sure who these characters are anymore or how they've developed over the years, but they definitely got somebody there, and it looks like Superman's coming to save her. And then in the last few panels, we see that you've added an additional one. And was that additional one needed? Could have you merged them together? Probably, but I think that what you've done here doesn't actually quite break anything. I think that it can still work very well. There's still a nice amount of flow and readability to it. And this eye shot does increase the drama somewhat. Um, this panel here, I might have shot a little bit differently, but that's just me being very nitpicky there. I still think that you've done an excellent job, and overall, I'm quite pleased with what you've accomplished here, and I think that you should be too. An amazing example of someone who has taken a page that they've worked off of and significantly improved it.
Yeah, if I can just say, like, one of these
Yeah.
pages I would buy.
Oh yeah,
I would buy one of them,
definitely.
and it wouldn't
Which
be
one?
it wouldn't be the original for sure.
Yep.
Like, this second his version of it just kicks so much
Yeah.
ass.
It
Yeah.
rocks. Yeah.
Yeah. Next up is Andy Liu. Now Andy submitted a few pages, but part of this was I only wanted one page. So we took this one, and you can see like Andy's coloring has gotten so much better than previous entries and stuff. So I'm really respecting a lot of what he's done here. Looking at it, I'm comparing P1 to P1, looking at P2 to P2. I'm kind of looking back and forth here and stuff like that. Um, I like Andy's layouts. I like that P1 on his. I like P2. Really like P3. P4 has got a lot of movement to it, and it's thud, zoink, kapow. It's fun. The only thing I'm gonna say when it comes to this so far is, and like the figure work, great. There's a little foreshortening issues and stuff like that, but overall, I'm really liking the figure work. Love how Spider Gwen looks. Um, but it's funny how the backgrounds in the original don't bother me. They don't seem boring. They seem dynamic and interesting. The backgrounds in Andy's, especially the last panel, does nothing for me. It's not helping me. I think I would have like maybe come in and drawn some quick blam 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 panels or something like that with starburst motion blurs or something like that inside, or some some speed lines or something like that, some impact lines and stuff, and had some impact there. Because like when I look at P3, that simple background really works for that panel, right? Like it's just black with a little bit of shading going on and some lines going across and stuff like that. But a lot of it, even when this simplified background or this background in P1 works. P2, there's a lot of space going on, a lot of dead space, and it's filled up with a background that I'm not necessarily in love with and stuff, right? Like it's just okay. But yeah, this I think, Andy, this is your best entry so far. Your figure work is getting even better. But this last P4, I'm just not so in love, especially when I'm looking at their P4, bro. The original P4 is top bar. Do you know what I mean? And that's really hard to compete with. So when I'm comparing panels and stuff like that, your P1, their P1, comparable. Good stuff. Their P2, your P2, they're not really showing much in theirs, and you've got way too much space in yours. Their P3, your P3, comparable. Good stuff. So your P1 and P3 are comparable. Your P4 you get destroyed in. So look at what the artist did in their P4 and take notes. Andy, good stuff though. Next up, Clayton.
Yeah, let's do it. Next up, we have Michael Patterson. Michael Patterson, great job here. My friend, you've done some excellent work. Um, that first panel with do you know the name of this character, Ed?
Nick Fury.
Nick Fury. There you go, man. I
Yep.
feel like I need to educate myself. Nick Fury, you've done an excellent job of studying this, the original, and then doing it up in your own style. I like the additional shadows that you've added to it. That
Hmm.
increases the drama, of course. Now, there's a little bit of weird anatomy going on with his leg there that needs to be fixed. If I
Yep.
was the editor and I was looking at that, I'd say, hey, redraw this leg because the anatomy needs to be sorted. I can see that you got the main muscle groups in there, but it's not quite foreshortened and positioned correctly. Other than
Hmm.
that, pretty solid job. Um, but again, we see some similar issues happening with his arm here. So there's a few technical fundamental areas in which you could improve the drawing aspect of things. So, moving on from that, however, not sure what's happening here. If this is a window breaking, or I guess this is a light. Is it a light breaking, maybe, or a bit of machinery? I feel like in general, uh, unless you're going to include something that's clear and that helps to add to the story, it doesn't need to be there, and you could use that real estate to increase the size of the next panel. Now, you've changed things up a little bit in the next panel here in comparison to the original. Uh, Possibly not for the better because here he's about to maybe click a button on his machine or something, but this isn't immediately obvious what it is he's working with there. Okay, so
Hmm.
whereas in this one, you can see that there's the definite mechanism that he's putting into action. That fist is coming straight toward the camera, so there's that additional level of impact. He's also got a little bit more pizzazz going on in his personality. You can see that he's angry and there's meaning behind what he's doing. There's emotional gravitas to this character, whereas in yours, he's kind of just holding his hand up and waiting to see what happens, I guess. The following panel, look, I think both could have been improved upon. So both the original and yours could have been much more dynamic. And then in the final panel, this is a cool action sequence. You've replicated it quite well. But again, just some of these errors within the drawing. Okay, you really want to get back to your fundamentals and start studying up on those. Now, that's not to say you haven't put in a tremendous amount of effort into this page. You should be very pleased with what you've accomplished here. There's just certain areas that, now you know what to focus on in order to take it up a notch. So, good luck with that. And I can't wait to see what you come up with in the future.
Just a very small quick note on this one.
Hmm.
Um, pull mine up. There we go. Uh,
Yep.
here's his knee. Here's his toe. Knees track over the toes. That's the easy lesson. It's that easy. So just keep that in mind. Generally, your knee is going to track over your toe. Okay.
Hmm.
Nice and easy. So when you're doing squats in the gym or doing any motion or anything like that, the knees are going to track over the toes. It's kind of weird that the knees coming on the inside here and the toes coming on the outside makes the leg kind of snappy, right?
Oh, there you
Cool.
go. I never knew
And my
that.
guess is for P2 or whatever this is here is maybe he'd get the colorist to do a
Yep.
hologram or something like that in there or something. That would have been my guess, but we don't
Hmm.
see it, right? Next one is Rashid Mugi. Um, cool. So taking an original 9-panel block layout that's pretty standard, and there's a lot of storytelling that gets handled in that, and redoing it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels. A little
Hmm.
bit tough. So we've got P1, the Batmobile pulls up to a gate. P2, security comes and checks. P3, close up on the security. P4 seems to be rolling in. P5, Bats gets out and there's some people approaching. P6, it's Commissioner Gordon, police coming up and Bats talking to him. Here's the problem here is that the new version covered the storytelling. Batmobile rolls up, gets checked, goes in, Bats meets Gordon, right? It's really not that exciting of a page, right? But the first version is exciting. The first version lays the beats. The first version has tap, 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 tap of the rain, whoosh, the wind blowing in, boom, the arrival of the car, boom, inside, Bats comes out. He's imposing. You could imagine him coming in and walking through. Gordon sipping his coffee, sets it aside, and says, "Hey, Bats." Do you know what I mean? Like the mood of this first one is off the charts. And that was not captured. The story was captured in this newest rendition. So I'm not going to get into like there's some little drawing issues of the characters. They're basically kind of little blobs at certain points, and it's tough because this is a pencil drawing, and I get it, man. My lesson for Rashid is to look at the impact of the original page and learn from that because whoever did this original page is a storyteller. So you told a story, but in the original, that story was being told, right? And so keep that in mind, man. Okay.
Definitely. Absolutely. All right. Next up, we have. Let's take a look here. We have Luke Herbert. All right, Luke. This looks like it's from The Walking Dead. So cool
Yep.
to see some Walking Dead representation here. And what I love is that you've interpreted the page in your own unique style and you've colored it up in a cool way. So, I think that in and of itself, your style of drawing works well. I think it is publishable, again, for what it is. And with a style like this, it's difficult to argue with it because it does detour away from the classical Marvel comic book look. I know Walking Dead is Image, but just
Hmm.
the classic visuals that have been established by artists who have come and gone, but maybe Jim Lee would be one of the main examples to look toward. So yours detours a long way away from that, and so it can kind of stand on its own as a result. But let's take a look at whether or not you've told the story effectively. With that said, so this first panel very similar to the original panel, except yours just has less height to it, which is unfortunate. So I think that maybe there's a good chance you could have gone ahead and just because these panels are basically the same here at the end. So what you could have
Hmm.
done instead is just merged these three together into one, maybe had a close-up shot of just her eyes, or maybe her eyes and her nose and mouth, and that would have increased the intensity of the situation that's unfolding, because you still got the action here. You still got her hacking up zombies in the following panel. It's just that it's a real shame to waste this space on what is essentially the same panel, and panels that don't really need to be there. We don't need a nice portrait shot of the zombies. We just need to see them getting hacked up. We know that they're there. And then
Oh, okay. So
in
just sorry, Clayton. One little
yeah,
jump
go
is
ahead.
that, and it's hard to tell in this storytelling on this page, but Michonne
Yeah,
had zombies that she was dragging around on chains, her little pets type of thing.
right. Oh, okay.
And so I don't know if
Oh, I
you see that, but
see.
those
Yeah,
two zombies with the collars are her pets. And unfortunately, both in the original and the second one, I don't think it really shows them being dragged around as well. Like, and maybe that could have, and that's why you didn't
gotcha.
catch it, right?
Yeah, it's not as obvious. And here, of course, you could maybe capture it in, and you did. You captured it in that first panel. But yeah, maybe as she's pulling and moving her arm around, it would have been great to see them, kind of swaying back and forth as they're being pulled.
Hmm.
And then in the following panel down here, it might have been good to zoom out a little bit there, just so that we could see what's going on around this guy, see who's actually talking to him, because it's not obvious to me who's talking to him. Is that a zombie talking to him? Is it her talking to him? Is it somebody else? It's hard to say, because there's nothing here to indicate who that person really is besides just a kind of form. And then in the final panel, I really love the layout here. I love the angle that you presented the woman on. Again, I'm not sure exactly of her name, but uh, that still remains to be said that you've
Michonne.
done a great job here. And then, yeah, you've got the zombies there at the side of her, and it might have been good to. Again, it looks like they've come out at the side, so they're kind of repositioning themselves from being at the side of her, or from being at the back of her to being at the side of her. And so, if we could have kept that consistency a little bit more, I think that the message would have come across once again that they are her slaves, that they're attached to her, that she's holding them on chains. But still, I don't think that's necessarily a big deal. You've done a great job with this last panel, and I think it captures what it needed to. But overall, wonderful work on this. Think about what panels you can cut out, what panels don't need to be there, and how, with the panels that are there, you can include artwork within it that tells the story in a more obvious manner where the reader doesn't. There's no chance the reader could become confused as to what is happening.
Okay, next up is Yantono Leon. And
Yeah,
I'm looking
nice.
at redoing a McFarlane Spidey piece.
A
Well, not even
classic.
Spidey, it's Peter and MJ, right, as adults. First panel, same. It's just this kind of almost graphic overlay of a photo type of thing, right? Of Manhattan. Good enough. Except for the lettering, it is irritating as hell. You do not come. Oh, where's my brush? Sorry. Being this close is bad juju. This first one is fine, but being that close to the the border, it just doesn't work very well, right? Second one is P2, and I think McFarlane showed the bed for dramatic effect of like how sexy Peter had gotten as an adult type of thing, right? And so we've got the bed, and I don't necessarily love that shot. There's a lot of wasted space, but again, I think he's showing the sexiness of the bed and how big it is and all that kind of stuff. And then I look at the Yantono's version here, and it got even bigger. And Peter got smaller, and there's way more in this shot that it's just this is a massive shot now. And I'm like, why are we showing so much going like it just bumped it. Like I get to see more of an empty bed here, more of a giant double king bed or something like that. Like it's not really making sense. So it took what wasn't great about McFarlane's panel and made it even less great. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't a great panel to begin with and made it worse. The only thing that I liked is that the lamp is cropped. We don't
Yeah.
need to see all of that shit, right? So it went from like a muscular, sexy Peter with kind of weird anatomy going on and stuff like that to like kind of this boyish Peter that's lost in a giant double king bed or something, right? Going down to
Mhm.
P3, same shot, basically, just done in this style. I think this artist does it well. Um, I'm a little confused by what the size of this hand to this head. I don't know if I'd measure it out, but like my hand is his hand is bigger than his head, and that hand's further away from the viewer, right? And
Yeah.
so like that's a big ass hand. So either yeah, the anatomy inconsistencies here are, but the framing is nice and nicely drawn figure. Like MJ looks good. She's a good looking girl or whatever. Second one is this straight on shot. Um, if you were to show this to me, would I guess this is Peter and MJ? I don't know. But then again, maybe I wouldn't have guessed that from McFarlane's original, like his run back at this time period and stuff, right? Uh yeah, I don't know if this one's doing a lot. Again, the lettering's wrong. I think this artist could learn a lot of how to layer their lettering and stuff like that. It just I don't know why this is here and this is out, and why there's so much space in this bubble and stuff. There's a lot of things happening. So what I usually say is when you're looking at an original, look at how they like these letterers back in the days were so freaking good. Okay, not always, but almost always. Learn from them. They already mastered the craft. Learn how they did their spacing, how they space between the lines, between the word balloons, all this kind of stuff. Learn it, okay? Because it needs to be learned looking over here. Um, really, these are the same shots. So all I can say is like technically, this bed didn't need to get bigger. This hand didn't need to get bigger. This white space didn't need to get bigger. Her hair, well, it was the 90s. It could get bigger. And that's it for that.
Mhm. Yeah, good stuff. I mean, awesome page to work off of.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we've got some Hellboy going on. And this one is by Jeff Wellborn.
Hmm.
So excellent work on this piece. You've got a solid style that think complements Mike Mignola's very well. I love the amount of detail you've incorporated into your page, specifically in the background. So here we get a really good sense of the environment and the world that Hellboy is a part of. And what it does for us as the readers, it draws us in. It plants us in this world a lot more firmly. And thus we become more invested. We become hooked in to this matrix, essentially, that you're cultivating here on your page for us to be a part of. And so, yeah, you've got these great architectural like rubble going on, and you've got the trees and the fog that's happening in the background. You built upon what was in the original very well. And then we've got some close-ups of Hellboy. Now this is a direct side shot, but it works quite well, and you haven't overdone it. There's not a million side shots. There's not a million straight on front shots that you've incorporated into every panel on the page. And so even though you've got one of them here, you've got that additional uh, dynamicness running throughout the rest of the panels. And then this lovely lady finds him, and I think that works quite well. You know, we can see that he's injured. You're showing that. Now he doesn't seem to be injured in the original page, but he is holding his shoulder in the one that you've done up. So it looks like he's in some sort of pain there. And then you've got him talking to the lady. I think this is a great shot. It's a classic comic book shot that you can pick for two people that are talking to one another. And then in this last panel, I love what you've done here with the skeleton in the foreground. Not only does that introduce some depth, but it's a great visual element that increases the mood of the scene. You know, it makes it nice and spooky. And I just think it goes gorgeously with what is happening with the rest of uh, the imagery in this last panel, and it works really well with the theme that's going on. It's a horror theme, and so this skeleton is just sitting there beautifully. And I love the way in which it's framing Hellboy and the lady too. Again, great environmental elements that you've implemented into the background. All round, awesome job. And I wish that I had more feedback and critique to give you on this one, but I think overall, just in terms of technical drawing ability and then storytelling, you really hit the nail on the head here.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, like no
Yeah,
no shade throwing at Mike's original, but I would buy Jeff's over it. I
yeah,
prefer the style, the storytelling. Like Jeff killed it here.
heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get yours up, Ed.
Okay, next one is Judd, and this is another one from him, but not in the order of like it's a different book.
Okay,
Remember we were looking at his stuff earlier, right? So
yeah,
we could recognize. I remember. I think it was Liefeld that submitted an entire book that was done horizontally and pissed off his editors so bad, and he wouldn't change it. He refused to. And I remember hearing about huge fights over it and stuff like that. So this is that book, right?
wow,
Um, now, honestly, I don't know if I love the blur on Juggy's hand here. I get why he's doing it and stuff, but I don't. Again, I don't know if I love it. Is Spidey fighting him, or are they on the same team? Is Juggy missing him, and Spidey's jumping over him? Like it's just not my favorite panel here. Like Spidey's drawn really well. I appreciate him. But I'm not in love with Juggy or the storytelling in this P1. P2, we've got a posed shot and they look cool and can't get better than that. Like that's just good perspective, good, coolness. I get it.
yeah,
Um, in the original P2 though, there was a lot more. There's a bit of depth between the characters, and I think he could have punched that here. Had is this Proudstar Warbird? I don't know. There's a few versions of this character, right? Of generations and stuff. So maybe had him bigger and more in the front here, just punched him forward a little bit, right? Um, and then P3, I like this, but again, like, I don't know. Okay, so little slip. Juggernaut's one of my favorite characters, and I just don't feel like he's that imposing here. Like knowing what Judd can do, I feel like he kind of slipped here. That especially in P1, he could have shown a massive mammoth Juggernaut bashing through stuff, because then it's okay to see his hand later and show Shatterstar and everybody else, a little bit more going on and stuff like that, right? But this first panel of Juggy, just think it's a little weak, and it takes away from the page. The rest of the page, if this P1 was strong, the rest of the page would have fit perfectly, right?
hmm. Solid style though. Well done.
Yep, love his style. Love his style.
Okay, let's see who we've got up next. All right. So I feel like this page has come up before, but this time it's been created by Jumanja. All right,
Hmm.
great job on this, Jumanja. Let's see what we've got happening. Okay, so
Just a
this.
quick thing. It was me
Hmm.
that screwed up. There's an edit chop on the top of her head. It wasn't in the original like that. Like there was something that went on when I copy pasted in, and so don't mind that little
Oh,
clip
yes.
on the top of P1 there. Okay.
No worries. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that first panel, so just to begin with, there's some very interesting things going on that detour away from some of the conventions that are used, the typical conventions that you would see within a comic book. And one of them here is this strange blurriness to the panels. It
Hmm.
feels like there's some kind of glowing blur that has been placed around the outside of them. I would get rid of that completely and make sure that these are clean cut and sharp. Okay, because I don't think that works very well for a comic book format, just visually. You want there to be visual clarity between the panels. Even if they're overlapping and things like that, there needs to be that visual clarity there. Next up, we've got so the first panel, cool. It's pretty much the same as the original panel, just in a
Yep.
smaller frame. So good job there. And then we get to these next few panels, which again, super unconventional layout. The gutter here is way too thick for the other gutters that we see around the page. In fact, there's very little consistency between the gutter spacing between each of the panels. That really needs to be consistent. Next up, in terms of what's inside the panels, especially throughout these three, and I'm assuming the path I'm supposed to follow needs to go around like that from this panel to that panel to this panel and then down. So the flow is a little bit funky. But
Mhm.
then what's being presented in these panels is not entirely obvious. Like this, I understand what's going on with the reference there to look at, and also having looked at this for a little while, but I should immediately know that I'm looking at a sewer here. So I would zoom the camera out a little bit. Let's introduce more information to tell us exactly what it is we're looking at and make it more obvious. And then we've got, oh, hang on a second. So here's the thing, we've got Wolverine actually reaching up in this panel, which would indicate that actually my eye path is supposed to go down to this one and then across to this one. And then we've got his arm, which is actually telling me visually to go straight down to this last panel and completely skip out on this one. So major flow issues going on. Um, you yeah, I mean, you probably could have had his. I mean, yeah. So the panels you've included here are good. So have his arm here, make it more obvious what order I'm supposed to go in as I'm reading it, and it reaches up. That's great. It's good information to have. And then in this last panel, um, yeah, I mean that could have been merged together, same as the original one. Right now, you could mix up the original one a little bit, but unless it needs to be split into two panels, I would just leave it as one and then really think about what image you're going to include in that one to get across the information that needs to be put to the viewer. And these are fairly okay. The shots you have picked for Wolverine, but they could have been stronger. Okay, this is almost a direct back shot of him. Looks quite two dimensional, thus flat. And then this panel here, it's a good up close shot of Wolverine, and I think it works fairly well actually. The question is, could have you merged them together and created one image that captured the impact that we're looking for? Lots of work went into it. That's obvious. Hopefully, you'll take what I've said here and you'll start to apply some of it to your pages here on after, and that you'll see a significant improvement as a result. But otherwise, good effort for now, and
Hey,
you
just
should be proud of what you've accomplished.
just one thing I wanted to say about him grabbing the pipe. It's very
Mhm.
confusing to have the pipe the same color as his costume.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
They specifically did it in the original that the pipe was brown. It stood out from all the panels that it shows.
Yeah.
And for the new version to have the pipe the same color as his costume adds to the confusion.
That's another good observation there, Ed.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is Yantono Leong, another entry from this artist, but a totally different page, which is awesome. Totally different book, actually. This is probably Uncanny X-Men. I'm going to guess in the high 180s or something like that, fighting Eric the Red. And so first panel, like when I look through this, all the panels are pretty much the same. Like beat for beat, everything's the same here, right? So
Mhm.
the question is, what was done different? What was done better? What was done worse? I like the perspective in the new in sorry Yantono's P1. I think the the ship, although it looks a little stouter, a little shorter, it's well drawn, and that thing on the ground is also well drawn. That Eric the Red is constructing a gateway or something like that, right? P2 in the new one gets a little less dynamic. Like I understand the point, as in the pointing of Eric, right? But it's not quite as exciting and dynamic. I do like the action lines coming off of Storm and Banshee coming in, right? So that's pretty cool and stuff I get. But overall, it's just, I like the close up of Eric here and stuff. Um, P3 looks good, pretty standard. right? Blowing things apart. Not a lot of changes from the original. Storms, I actually like how the cape is swooshed out and stuff like that, or her whatever it is, kind of cape. P4, same shot, but a lot more dead space up here. And I don't understand why. Like, we zoomed out of the characters, we covered Colossus's face. Like, look at this. We covered Colossus's face with a word balloon. Do you know what I mean? Like, this makes no sense for me. I think this P4 could have been drawn better than the original, and I think this artist has the skill, but instead they made it worse, which is really weird for me because like I can see the skill here, but this could have been like headshot, headshot, head, like a really close up of an angle to the stress and like, oh my god, like seeing the expression on Wolverine and Colossus and everything like that. Instead, like it's further away and you covered my favorite character's face. So kind of pissing me off there. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. P5. Exact same shot. With slightly less intensity in the mouth. That's it. And it's more of a straight shot on the face instead of slightly angled up in the original. And that slight angle up carries more weight in it, right? So again, when I'm comparing it to the original, not quite as good. And what frustrates me is because pencil wise, um, Yantono has the skill to be just as good or even make better choices than some of these originals, right? Especially because you're looking at the original and saying, "Hey, I like this, but what else could be done?" Right? Last panel, big boom. I like the green, kind of cool, but it's almost the exact same shots. Colossus is kind of splayed, like a little bit taken away from Nightcrawler. He's jumping off to the side. Yeah, honestly, this is a fine page because it's 90% the same as the original. The changes that were made generally are not an improvement on the original. The pencil work is fine, but like covering Peter's face is a sin in my books. Next up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's more to it than just drawing ability, that's for sure.
Yep.
And you know, that's what they sometimes they don't teach you when it comes
Yeah.
to comic book art. All right, let's take a look at what we've got going on here. So this is Michael McDonnell, and the page that he's done up. Excellent work on this, Michael. I'll start off by saying that. So let's take a look at what's working here and what's not quite working here. Now, the original page, I feel like, has a lot of panels going on within it.
10. I just counted. It's 10.
Yeah, so that's a lot of panels. So the first thing I would have
Yeah.
done in recreating this page is actually tried to whittle them down to and consolidate a few of them, if it was possible. Um, and you may have done that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've done that. You've taken out 2 of those panels, so that's a good thing because I don't think there needs to be that many there. Now, in the first establishing shot, I don't think this first panel is necessarily a strong shot on the original. And I don't think that the one that you've created is a strong shot either. So I think on every single page, in my personal opinion, the first thing you want to do with the initial panel is draw the reader in. Give them something impactful that grabs their attention right off the bat. And I think that this panel here, if this was stretching across the entire top, heck, I think that would be a perfect example of the kind of panel you'd want to have to capture the reader's attention. Now, in your second panel here, I do think that it lacks a little bit more impact. You really want to blow Batman up there and make him the center of attention, where he seems a little bit insignificant here. We're kind of looking down on him almost, or it feels that way. And I know he's probably supposed to be coming toward us here, and that's why it feels like that. But you want to we want to be looking up at him like he's this domineering figure that's about to take out these bad guys who have they look like they've maybe robbed something here. They're up to mischief of some kind. In the next few panels, we have the fight sequence play out. And it's similar actually to the original page in terms of its vibe, I feel like, in terms of its level of impact. And I do believe that both yours and the original could have been much more impactful, more dynamic angles, a little bit more depth happening. You know, have one of the characters been thrown into the foreground, the other one been thrown into the background. Like, let's see some cinematic action happening here. And that comes down to playing around with the camera angles and where the characters are being positioned, how they're being framed, how they're being captured by that lens. And then in the final few panels, we've got you've got the scene just being shot straight from the front. It it's flat. It's a little bit boring. I think you could have presented that in perspective, and it would have done a heck of a lot more of actually making it interesting to look at. You know, and we can see that in the original here. They've put it on a bit of a perspective, and it does feel that much more three dimensional. Now, hey, I like this panel here where we're looking up at Batman. That's great to see. You know, again, he's got that domineering nature about him, and we want him to feel big. We want him to feel like he's a force to be reckoned with. And in the final panel, we've got this nice big shot of the car. Now, I would have shrunk that down a little bit, but if it was shrunk down a little bit, I think that would have worked really well. The angle that you've got it on there, and the way in which you presented it. So there's a few things to work on there. Obviously, some technical drawing ability aspects comes down to the fundamentals, proportion, anatomy, that kind of thing could definitely all be focused on in order to improve your technical drawing ability. But in terms of interior comic book storytelling as well, keep in mind some of the things I've told you there. And I think that you're going to be very happy with the results after you implement them. For now, though, awesome effort with the skills that you have developed up until this point.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say if I can bring my
Yeah,
page up.
go ahead.
I really like this last panel. I think the impact of it is cool, but watch out for this tangent running along, like this
Yeah.
line running along here with the panel and stuff like that. Like the top of the car seems to coincide with it's not quite breaking it. It's not quite under it. It's just it's an ugly tangent. So it's a cool panel. I like that car racing forward and stuff like that and coming at us and has a big impact. But because of that tangent, it damages the impact there. Cool. Okay. Next up, I've got Nautily Blue. We kind of wrestled with that one earlier, right?
Oh,
Now
yeah.
this page is killing it. Another X-Men, and I'm very happy I get all the X-Men ones. I don't know if I planned this or
You
not.
organized this on purpose, didn't you?
Yeah, possibly. Right? We've got the Dark Phoenix coming out, right? So very cool reveal. I believe it goes uh one, two. So in the original it'd be like 1, 2, 3, right? And so here we've got kind of one. I like Colossus and Cyclops in the water. There's a problem though. Colossus is in his metal form. In the original, he's Peter. He hasn't transformed. In this one, she's drawing him in his metal form. And I'm almost positive Colossus can't swim in that metal form. I think he'd sink like a rock.
It's a
So
good point.
something to think about with knowing your characters and knowing the storytelling is that I'm pretty sure Peter would float, Colossus would sink. And then we've got glub, glub, glub. So I think this glub, glub, glub of like the buildup of bubbles coming here and stuff like that could have been just drawn better. Because right now I'm kind of like, are these eggs? Are these eggs that are boiling up or something like that? It looks like eggs to me for some reason. You know, like little yolk in the center with the white. Maybe I eat a lot of eggs, so that could be.
It does
But
look like an egg. I'm hungry
it
looking
kind of
at
looks
that.
like an egg. So I think this could like be some bubbled up or something like that. Or P2, 3 could have been drawn better. P4 works, but we've also got P4 and P5, which is almost the exact same thing, right? So I'm kind of like, I don't know how this is feeling on me, how this is landing. Um, is she coming from way under the water and the energy is spurting out of it, which kind of shows in the original P2, right? Um, I maybe there's maybe change it all together and just show an underwater shot of bubbles coming up and like energy coming up or something like that under the water, and all of a sudden, broosh. Her what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The P5 here I love, I love, I love. Really good job. Love the expression on her face. Love the power stance. Love the rendering. Love the coloring. Love everything. So out of this whole page, P1 I get. Um, just color Colossus's skin color. The bubbles I don't get, but this last P5 is perfectly on point. Perfectly on point. I absolutely love it. Want it. Would it should be a picture, a poster, my avatar, something like that. It is a great drawn panel. So
For sure.
great job on it. Yep.
All right, awesome stuff. And I believe this is the last one, actually,
Yep.
at least on my file. All right, cool. So who have we got here? We've got Bora. All right, Bora.
Now, just a
Beautiful.
heads up, if we watch the original page, we this was taken from a similar book or from the same book as another page that was done 20 entries ago or something like that. So we will
Oh,
recognize
okay.
this style of the storytelling in the original one.
Yeah, I do recognize this actually. So what book is this from? Do you know, Ed?
I don't know, man. Actually, I don't. I like the style of it, but I don't think I know the book.
Yeah, it's well, very cool stuff. It looks like a good read, an interesting read too. And let's see what
Mhm.
you've done here for it, Bora. So, I like this. I mean, you got a very kind of spooky vibe to your art, which I think works really well with the theme of the story that you're working with. And I feel that here. This almost looks like it's been taken from a movie. It's so convincing that the shadows and the shading that you've implemented into it, and I think that it works really well. It's nice and dynamic, kind of shot over the shoulder from behind. I'm not immediately certain what it is she's leaning her head against. So if that's supposed to be a wall, I would have maybe added something in there to indicate it. Maybe some wallpaper, something just to tell me what it is she's got her head against. Because especially in black and white, that's not immediately obvious. I always want to make the things that have been represented in these panels as obvious as possible, so that the reader doesn't become confused. Because you are their translator, right? There's information on the page that they're being given, and you've got to get it across to them in a way that they understand. So that's your job as a comic book artist. And so next up, we've got this panel here. I think that one could have been more dynamic. You pulled the camera out a little bit, so especially when we were looking at the two characters from a distance and then directly from the side, unless it's really important for it to be shot from the direct side like this, I think maybe you could have taken the camera, pulled it up a bit, be looking down on them. Looks like they're in some kind of spooky situation. So that would have been great to make them look small and maybe vulnerable. Next up, we've got this nice big shot of one of the female characters. And it looks like, is this this must be the character who has the situation going on, whatever that is, whether she's becoming a zombie or she's got a disease or something. I would have shown a bit more of that on her face, drawn it in there. There's definitely there's some flesh eating things going on her skin by the look of it. So I would have liked to have seen that in a more obvious manner, especially in a close up shot such as this. You could have really captured some nice detail there. This shot's pretty good. I think you could get away with leaving it like that. This one's also quite nice, although it depends on the perspective that we're looking at them on here. Is she sitting? Are they both sitting on the bed? If they're both sitting on the bed, then this woman looks much shorter than this one here, and I don't think that you meant for that. And it does look like this girl is sitting down on the bed, from what I can tell. So, if that's the case, just make sure that the perspective lines up. Her head should be maybe here. Her head should be there. Shoulders, shoulders, right? Make sure the perspective lines up between the characters. And then in the final panel, again, more of a dynamic shot would have worked quite well here. I can see what you were going for with the direct front shot, but, looking at how these images are stacked on top of one another, you got this vertical visual pathway going on, and I just don't think that that's necessarily something that you want. It is creating a strange. I guess you could think of it as being a tangent there for me, at least. So I maybe would have had that, maybe looking down on her from above. or on a bit more of an angle or something. But otherwise, I mean, magnificent work. You've definitely got a solid style going on, and I think that if you keep working at it, keep on developing it, tighten that style up, you're going to go a really long way with your sequential comic book art. So well done on this, and congratulations for completing the page. All right,
And that's it.
that is
Yeah.
that, as they say, Ed.
A lot of amazing entries. It's funny because we're having more and more of these contests, and so part of me wonders, like, oh, geez, are we going to get less entries or something like that, or is this too much for people? And a lot of our established members keep submitting, keep because they keep pushing themselves, right? And we also get a lot of new people coming out and saying, "Hey, yeah, I want to try this. This looks like it looks tons of fun." Listen, guys, we said it at the beginning of this video, and we're going to say it again. Everybody who submitted, everybody who brought a page to finish and stuff like that is a freaking champ. Okay. So I know it sometimes can feel like, oh, I just got beat up. Oh, there's a lot going on here and stuff like that. Let that digest. Let some of the feedback digest and just say, nope, I slayed it. I submitted. And now I'm going to learn from it. Right. And that's what all of this is about. That's what our group's about. That's what me and Clayton are about. That's what these contests are about. We're not giving away millions of dollars here or anything like that. We're giving you and you're giving us the opportunity to really grow. And that's how to draw comics, right?
Absolutely, Ed. And a big thank you to Ed for actually bringing this competition together. He always does. He's the driving force behind it. It's his baby. And it's no wonder that we get so many magnificent, driven artists entering the competition each and every time with a driving force like Ed. But yes, just to mirror what Ed said there. Everyone's a winner who enters into this competition. I know it seems cliche, but to pull off a
Mm.
big page like that is nothing short of epic. It's very difficult to do. Take our critiques and see them as, little golden nuggets that you can use to upgrade, level up your comic book pages going forward, because that's really our intention behind the critiques that we've given you here, and we hope that you'll use them wisely, and that it didn't hurt you too much. Some of the things that we said, it
Yeah.
didn't get hurt you too much on a personal level, because it's supposed to be there to help you out. But yeah,
And the thing
otherwise,
is,
congratulations to everybody.
I think that one of the main points is that even for us, I think it's a learning process. Like we could see, like I'm learning, I'm watching mistakes, and I'm watching strong points on all these pages and what these artists bring. And even Clayton, like some of his feedback today was just like, I really appreciated that, and I'm sure Clayton picked up some things about what I was saying. Right, the quote of the this video was for Clayton teaching me to go in and out and in and out, and I'll try to remember that going forward.
It's
Guys,
hard
we
to
got another
forget.
contest coming up. We got another contest coming up. It's the Spooky Slam,
Mm.
due just after Halloween. And so it's already on the go. I'm already receiving some entries. This video was a little bit slow on the roll coming out. We had some technical issues, then some viral issues, and things kind of delayed us and stuff like that. But no matter what, which way you slice it, this video is going to be up on Facebook, up on YouTube, and stuff like that on our channel. Clayton's going to make sure of that, and so we can view
Absolutely.
it in perpetuity and everybody's going to enjoy and learn from it.
Totally. Awesome stuff. Well, thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Ed. And until next time, keep drawing.
Right on, guys.